Hey guys. This is part 8 of What If Naruto Was One of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 36, Breaking Bad. Imperial Capital. Mangetsu watched the heavily fortified and completely sealed off Imperial Capital in front of his eyes. His plan to draw the enemy outside of his fortress had quite frankly failed miserably. The enemy general had not fallen for his trick. Granted, he had tried to send 1,000 men from the Imperial Guard to save the besieged port of Ming, where the daimyo's favorite consort's family resided, and one which was currently surrounded by Amuro's 2,000-strong force. The reinforcement in the form of 1,000 Imperial Guards, however, fell into Mangetsu's trap, and Jinpachi's warriors decimated them all, losing 300 of their own in the process. What drew his attention in this brief victory was the enemy troops' loyalty and courage towards each other, and their cause, as not a single one of those 1,000 Imperial Guards surrendered even when they were completely surrounded by an enemy army. They fought till the bitter end, taking as many of Mangetsu's men with them to the afterlife. They didn't even try to flee back towards the capital, which could force their general to either drop the sealing jutsu protecting the city in order to save them and risk the enemy breaching the impregnable fortress, or make the rest of his men inside the walls watch miserably as their comrades were slaughtered right before their eyes. It's just like you said, Commander Saji. The Imperial Guard is something else, he couldn't help but praise, despite the fact that these very men were holding his father hostage in that city. The leader of the Kemo Brigade had a somber look on his face as he watched the sea of funeral pyres in the field leading towards the sealed capital, each one bearing a fallen Imperial Guard member. He watched Mangetsu give a signal, making his men light the pyres, at once giving the fallen enemy warriors an honorable farewell, while also sending a startling message to their surviving comrades inside the sealed city of what was to become of them should they continue to resist. Mangetsu, while we have the city surrounded, our lines are stretched thin. The Imperial Guard will wait for us to weaken or slack off, or wait for reinforcements from the hinterland. Once they have a decisive edge, they will punch through our lines to annihilate us. This will only make them even more motivated to kill us, warned Saji, as he pointed at the 1,000 funeral pyres. Then should we break the siege of Ming and call Amuri and your man Erasure back with 2,000 of our men? It will bolster our numbers and strengthen our defenses, suggested Jinpachi. And leave our rear completely open? It's too risky, objected Haku. There is nothing in our arsenal that can break that barrier. It's just too strong. I've already lost 5 scouting teams and our lone frontal attack was repulsed with heavy casualties, reminded Saji, making the 2 swordsmen grimace. The Imperial Guard inside the city were most probably 15,000 strong, and added with the daimyo's personal force the numbers could be increased to 16,000 fighting men, well fed, trained and highly motivated to slaughter the enemy. While Mangetsu had a much smaller force of 9,500 men, less than half of them shinobi. 2,000 of them were already deployed in a siege of Ming port led by Amuri. Discounting the 100 to 200 he had lost probing the capital's defenses and the 300 lost in the first ambush with the Imperial Guard burning before him, he barely had 7,000 men surrounding the capital, not including the 501st Aerial Force. His position was weak and the enemy knew it. We should consider using the 501st. They may have sealed off the skies above the city, but we can still try to find a weak spot in the barrier, suggested Haku, drawing a sharp glare from her childhood friend. Not at all. Those are our best troops and only aerial fighting force of this nation. I will not risk them like that, otherwise I will never be able to face General Namikaze or my father even if we win the capital, answered Mangetsu resolutely. Haku hesitantly nodded, clearly understanding why her friend felt that way. The 501st was the dream of General Namikaze, one blessed by Genjutsu Hozuki personally. Both men had played a key role in its formation, and it held the finest ninjas from Kirigakure. Losing it would be a severe blow to Kiri's military power, and more importantly its historical legacy and prestige. Then how do we breach that barrier before we are annihilated? Asked Commander Saji honestly. He's right. We need to come up with something, agreed Jinpachi. Mangetsu looked at the burning pyres and pondered over the very same question before looking back at his comrades. Keep up the guard, but let the men take some rest whenever they can. Tomorrow we make our move. I'll let you know how soon enough. His comrades wanted to ask him quite a few questions, but he had already turned around and marched back towards his makeshift command center. General Abe watched the sea of funeral pyres of his martyred men burning in all directions across the capital. Standing on top of the mighty walls, he saw the fury in the eyes of the rest of his men. This can't go unanswered for long, General advised his second in command. They will pay in time for this act. When the time comes, I will unleash our fury upon them. But until then, we must wait, he said loud enough for the rest of his men to also hear. We will kill them all, General. Just say the word. We outnumber them. The Imperial Guard doesn't flee. We meet our enemies head first in battle. The veteran general raised his hand acknowledging the points raised by his galvanized men and looked them straight in the eyes. 3 days. Reinforcements will be here by then or even before that, and together we will slaughter every one of them. He promised them all. The resounding wave of ferocious cheering further bolstered his confidence that this course of action, while slow, would lead them to a complete victory in time. They just had to be patient and hold their ground a little longer. The enemy wouldn't risk destroying the capital completely in order to get to the daimyo and his family. Not only would that lead to the deaths of hundreds or thousands of civilians, thereby destroying their moral cause for continuing this foolish rebellion, but it would also lead to the death of their imprisoned Kage. Of course, they didn't know that Genjutsu Hozuki was already dead and resting in a coffin. His scouts had told him that the former Kage's son lead this enemy force. Mangitsu may not care about the city's inhabitants, unlike the more honorable General Namikaze, but he would not lay the city to waste if it placed his father's life in danger. It was why Abe had tightly controlled the news of the former Kage's demise to only his few trusted advisors and the daimyo himself. What will you do next, young Mangetsu? He wondered. Mangetsu looked at the stunned faces of his comrades as he finished explaining his strategy to take the capital. General Namikaze won't like it. He practically forbade such a drastic move, protested Commander Saji vehemently. Mangetsu, it places not just the innocents but your father's life at risk, pleaded Haku. The Hozuki clan heir looked at his last comrade, who looked at him curiously. This might just work. Nobody would prefer being lord of the rubble, agreed Jinpachi, drawing incredulous looks from both Haku and Saji, which only made him glare back at them. Do you geniuses have a better plan? In a matter of days, or maybe less, reinforcements from the hinterlands will be here. Do you want us to be surrounded and butchered? We have to take the capital before that. He practically yelled, making them both flinch. But still, General Namikaze, Haku. She looked at her friend, who looked right into her eyes without any hesitation or doubt. This decision and its consequences are mine. Are you all with me? Asked Mangetsu simply. He was pleased and relieved when she nodded, albeit a little less enthusiastically than he had wanted her to, which also made Saji sigh and give a nod of consent. Jinpachi gave him a challenging smirk. You'll lead the attack yourself? He challenged, drawing a smirk from the Hozuki clan heir. That's what a true general does, replied Mangetsu straightforwardly. Too risky. General Abe wouldn't do the same unless it was absolutely necessary, suggested Saji, earning a smile from Mangetsu as he picked up his sword. Then I'm glad I didn't learn from General Abe. Next day, when General Abe stepped out of his personal quarters in one of the watchtowers near the foremost areas of capital, he found a thick mist had completely surrounded the capital from all directions, kept from getting in only because of the barrier around the city. How is our barrier? He asked quickly. Firm, General. We haven't detected any attack yet in any of our sectors, reported his second-in-command. As if the man's words had been just a bit too early, the next moment a rumble started to spread across the entire city. The minor tremors soon transformed into a full-blown earthquake that shook each and every hut, house, tower, and the royal palace itself. The Imperial Guards sprung into action and manned their positions, but many were forced to rush into the streets in order to help the panicked civilians. Abe had to stabilize himself by grabbing a nearby wall as the earthquake started to become even worse, with many of the weakly built civilian houses collapsing upon themselves, burying its occupants alive in a gruesome end. Abe! Hide behind your walls, coward! We shall lay waste to you right here! Yelled a murderous voice from all over the mist. Hold your ground! Do not fall for their tricks! Warned the Imperial General in an ironclad voice. General, the earthquake is becoming worse. If this goes on, we will all be buried alive. The Imperial capital will be lost, warned his second-in-command. The general was about to reply back when a crushing tremor passed right beneath their tower, and he watched 2 of his men on the edge lose their footing and fall to their deaths. It became worse as the huge bells inside the palace started ringing urgently. The daimyo wants us to stop this attack. Abe gritted his teeth in frustration but didn't budge much to the shock of his second-in-command. We hold. Mangetsu flew across a huge column of Kirigakure shinobi currently concealed perfectly in the heavy mist he and his fellow swordsmen had created to obscure their presence from the enemy. Good work, men! Keep it going! He encouraged thunderously. 4,000 battle-hardened gazes increased their focus on his words and continued unleashing devastating earthquakes all across the area. He saw the sheer look of surprise on Haku's face, which made him smile and remember their conversation last night. What the hell? She had whispered. Abe won't come to us willingly. He has enough resources to last the siege for months and will wait for more reinforcements to come from the hinterlands before finishing us off. Which is why Earth style will help us force him out, advised Mangetsu with an infectious grin. Earth style? Most of our shinobi are terrible at it, replied Jinpachi with disappointment evident in his eyes for such a stupid plan, but Mangetsu only smiled. I know. I'm not looking for a quality attack that can help crush the barrier protecting the city, because frankly nothing in our arsenal can do that. But when 4,000 shinobi combine their powers, we can definitely unleash a gigantic man-made earthquake. Those waves can pass through the underground and reach the capital without us having to deal with the barrier. The more we intensify our attack, the greater the damage to the city, which will force the daimyo to scramble the Imperial Guard to meet us in open battle or risk getting his prized dominion reduced to rubble without even putting up a decent fight. Abe may not want to meet us in battle on our terms, but he will have no choice if the daimyo orders it, explained Mangetsu seriously. Still, innocents will die in this attack, Mangetsu. General Namikaze had asked us to do the opposite of that, reminded Haku hesitantly. I am not him, and I will not lose my army here for the sake of honor alone. I am getting into that city and saving my father your Kage at all costs. The daimyo and his entire clan shall pay for their actions. The question is, will you follow me in doing what's right for this nation's future? Asked Mangetsu harshly. He was satisfied when Haku nodded her consent, as did Jinpachi on being reminded of their oaths to Genjutsu Hozuki and Kirigakure, even if it meant adopting dirty means to protect what they were sworn to. How will we deal with the Imperial Guard once they attack us in full force? They do outnumber us 2-1 and are better trained than most of our forces, reminded Commander Saji of the Kemo Brigade, earning a cold smile from the Hozuki air. My strategy has not changed. Deception, diversion, and destruction will be the main pillars of our attack. As his shinobi fighters continued intensifying their attack, he could feel more and more chakra signatures disappearing inside the capital. Most of those were very weak in nature, civilians. For a moment, he felt remorse for his actions until he remembered that these people still served a monarch that held his father captive, had probably tortured him. No, this was the right course of action. It had to be. General Abe watched in silent horror as a few more buildings inside the capital couldn't withstand the terrifying earthquake and crumbled to dust right before his eyes. The screams of all those people inside the city and the pleadings of his second-in-command finally broke his resolve. Sir, we won't have anything left to protect if we don't stop the enemy, the daimyo ordered. Abe paused the young man by placing a hand upon his shoulder and giving him a determined look. Clear the mist with the help of the shinobi from the daimyo's personal guard. Then have the Imperial Guard march out to face the enemy, he ordered. Abe watched his men rush forth in order to carry out his new orders and thought about his next move. The enemy may have forced his hand through their ruthless action, but he still had a few advantages on his side. He had to engage the Imperial Guard but couldn't let them exit outside the city walls and the barrier through multiple points, as that would increase the probability of the enemy getting through even one of them by forcing their way. His best choice would be to fortify one opening point heavily, have the guard fan out across the battlefield quickly under the cover fire provided by the archers on the wall. He would also have to use a portion of the daimyo's personal guard made up of shinobi mostly to protect the Imperial Guard's flanks. If he could just keep his forces near enough to the barrier and the walls, near his vicinity, he could deal the enemy a devastating blow and pull his forces back to safety afterwards. But for this plan to succeed, he had to be present on the battlefield. With a determined look, he grabbed his ancestral sword and marched towards his men. Mangetsu saw hundreds of men arrive at the barrier protecting the main entrance of the capital. Moments later, the gigantic gates opened and the very ground started to tremble even more than before as a massive column of men walked out in a highly disciplined march. Those men were wearing traditional armor worn by the samurai, but theirs was pitch black in color. They had a heavy shield in one hand with a lion's maw imprinted on it. What caught his attention even more was the metal on that defensive weapon. The Kiri commander looked at his own sword Kabutawari and found some startling similarities. He then glanced at the 10-foot-long spear held by each Imperial Guard and found its end point composed of the same metal. So their weapons and probably armor are made up by the same blacksmith that created the 7 holy swords of our village. The swords on their hips might be made for fighting shinobi as well. Guess the daimyo didn't just hire the best to protect him in case the Kiri shinobi turned hostile. He gave them the best equipment, thought Mangetsu with a grudging respect. The barrier started to disappear in one specific portion, its opening protected by a phalanx of the Imperial Guard. Mangetsu quickly gestured the 501st and Haku to take cover among the forest as a few dozen warriors jumped outside the barrier and performed a set of hand seals. Soon enough the mist started to disperse. The earthquake stopped as the 4,000 shinobi now found themselves directly in the line of sight of the Imperial Guard. It was now or never. "Jinpachi, now!" he ordered. His fellow swordsmen charged through the woods with Commander Saji and the Kemo Brigade right on his heels. Thousands of Kiri shinobi soon joined the fray as an army now attempted to steamroll over the small opening in the barrier protected by the Imperial Guard. Seated atop his horse, General Abe watched the charge of the enemy army and signaled his own troops to get ready. Looking up, he saw his archers and artillery teams were also ready to deliver hell as soon as their targets were in perfect range. The enemy were aiming for the sole opening in the barrier he had given them, which was firmly defended by an entire phalanx of the Imperial Guard whose own flanks were covered by shinobi from the daimyo's personal unit. He saw an eye patch-wearing swordsman leading the charge and gave the signal moments later. The swordsman looked up to see a hail of arrows and explosive tags launched from the city walls aiming right towards him. Much to everyone's surprise, the projectiles passed right through the barrier, making Jinpachi raise his mighty sword swiftly. Bomb blast! A hail of explosive tags flew from his own sword and ignited mid-air, reducing the entire volley to ashes. Few of his own shinobi had surged forward and started their own attack. Water style, water bullets! The Imperial Guard roared as one and brought their shields together, giving rise to a shimmering field of energy. As soon as the water bullets hit the energy field, they were deflected right back at their casters, who couldn't even whisper their shock before they met their end. The Kemo Brigade took over the first shinobi attackers that fell and continued leading the charge. "Engage!" commanded Abe. A hail of long spears were thrown by the Imperial Guard in the front, making the Kemo Brigade soldiers form their own defense by forming a quick shield wall. Their frontal line was cindered to ashes when the spears made contact with their shield wall, resulting into a devastating explosion that rained shockwave and shrapnel everywhere. Commander Saji tried to reform his lines as soon as possible, but he already saw General Abe giving the signal to launch a second barrage of arrows and explosives from the city walls. He saw hundreds of Kiri shinobi launch multiple types of jutsu at the Imperial Guard, with each and every one of those attacks repelled with a terrifying ferocity. Chakra deflector shields? Mangetsu thought worriedly. It seemed his enemy had been quite smart in keeping the knowledge of such devastating arms and equipment hidden until necessary. The fact that Abe had not equipped such tools to the 1,000 martyred Imperial Guard he had sent out earlier to relieve Ming was a proof of his abundant caution and resolve to not give his adversaries any edge. Commander Saji was more than surprised when he heard the bugle for retreat from the rear, where Mangetsu was hiding in the forest alongside the 501st. The same shock and surprise was visible across their entire army, but he knew Mangetsu must have sensed the enemy's defense was too strong for a frontal attack, so he gave the order to retreat to his men, as Jinpachi did the same with his shinobi forces. If only they had General Namikaze with his teleportation powers here, the battle would be going in a completely different direction. He was stunned when the Imperial Guard roared once more and actually gave chase, led by General Abe himself. In response, he accelerated the retreat of his own forces, but a few units and wounded troops just weren't fast enough and were mercilessly slaughtered by the disciplined guard and their shinobi comrades, some personally slain by General Abe himself. However, they didn't push Saji and Jinpachi's forces into the forest, content to stay in near vicinity of their mighty barrier and cover fire from the city walls. General Abe had been in the process of ordering his vanguard to rejoin their lines inside the barrier when he felt a sharp pain erupt in his back. "General!" That was all one of his alarmed officers could cry out before he was silenced with a kunai to the head. It was as if the gates of hell were suddenly opened as a hail of kunai rained down upon his vanguard mercilessly. The speed of the projectiles were beyond human, and dozens of Imperial Guards fell before they even got a chance to defend themselves. Abe was struck with another kunai in his arm before his troops literally threw themselves in the line of fire to defend their general. Many regretfully paid the ultimate price in the task as Abe was forcefully dragged inside the barrier by his remaining officers. Looking back, he saw the enemy fire died down as soon as he was back inside. His second-in-command ordered it to be closed immediately, despite the fact that nearly 24 of their own men lay wounded in the battlefield. They were soon put out of their misery when a hail of kunai was once again fired from the forest that ended their pain. It would seem his enemies had impressive secret weapons of their own, one which they had kept well hidden. Next day, heavy rains fell from the skies, much to the surprise of the Imperial Guard that were still stationed outside the city walls but within their strong barrier. The enemy had not made any fresh attacks since their last failed attempt, which was a relief and point of worry at the same time. Many of them looked at their veteran general, who still held the field alongside them despite being wounded previously. The wounds thankfully had not been too deep. The general's armor had blocked the kunai from penetrating too deep, but he had lost blood, resulting in his pale face. "Rain shouldn't be falling at this time," commented General Abe with a frown. Another shinobi trick? Suggested his second in command. Maybe. We need to hold our defense. Before he could even finish his orders, the ground trembled once more as the enemy army marched in unison and emerged out of the woods in a disciplined manner. Once again their shinobi took up positions and knelt towards the ground as a white-haired young boy with a unique sword emerged from one of the large water puddles right in front of the barrier protecting the capital. It didn't take Abe more than a few moments to recognize the new arrival as the son of the former Mizukage, having met him in passing during his visit to Kirigakure a few years ago. Mangetsu Hozuki, commander of this army, he introduced himself loud enough for every warrior on either side to hear. Few of the Imperial Guard were about to attack when Abe ordered them to stand down as he rode up to the front lines, even stepping outside the barrier if only slightly to look at his enemy counterpart. Surrender, General. You have a fine barrier and good men defending this city, but if we can't get in then we shall reduce it to rubble, warned Mangetsu. I highly doubt that. Doing so would result in your own father's death, rebuffed Abe calmly, earning a grim nod from the young boy. It's a risk. But he'll be well protected, probably inside the safest place in the city, the daimyo's palace. We shall destroy the rest of the districts in time. When forced to choose between death or continue serving a feudal lord unable to protect their families, I wonder who the people will side with? Asked Mangetsu with a cold smile. Dishonorable, to think you would involve innocents. Abe was literally blown off his horse by a powerful chakra that exploded from Mangetsu's body as the boy's killing intent touched alarming levels, making even the Imperial Guard take a step back. Don't talk to me about honor. I know who I am and don't pretend to be something I am not. You serve a lord that exploits innocents and allows pirates to infest our lands and have the gall to talk to me about honor? I wanted to negotiate with a reasonable leader, but seeing how blind you are, I shall give you and everyone who follows you death, declared Mangetsu furiously, raising his fist high in the air, making the shinobi following him roar in unison. Earth style, earthquake. Abe quickly gave the order, unleashing a volley of arrows, explosives and artillery barrage from the city walls straight towards the enemy army. Mangetsu was even further alarmed when the ground started shaking even more than expected, and his eyes widened when hundreds of horsemen emerged on both his flanks and rushed towards his army in a fearsome cavalry charge. The Imperial Guard also roared bravely and marched outside the barrier in a phalanx formation protected by their own shinobi on their vulnerable flanks. He was now being attacked on three sides on the ground and also facing aerial bombardment, with the enemy just not in a position to allow him to carry out further damage to the city, most probably on the daimyo's orders. General Abe was not surprised when he watched the young boy grimace and quickly give the order to retreat once again. Don't let them escape, he commanded loudly. Mangetsu ran for his very life as the Imperial Guard on his heels gave a fearsome chase on their general's command. He watched his troops also repeating his action whilst trying to save themselves from the bombardment from the city walls while the royal cavalry closed in on their flanks. He had not anticipated a cavalry force to box him like this. The enemy had a few tricks up their sleeves, it would seem. No matter, so did he. As he reached the border of the forest, he smirked and raised his hand upward. For Kiri! He yelled. Right on cue, the 501st emerged from the forest and took to the skies, much to the shock of the Imperial forces. Without wasting a second, the Para-Special Forces Task Force split in half and flew towards each of the flanks where the Royal Cavalry was charging through. The Imperial horsemen found themselves to be sitting ducks and were torn to shreds as the 501st launched explosive kunai from their custom-made kunai launchers right in the middle of their attack formation, sending men and horses flying in pieces. More than a handful simply vaporized in the explosions, others were critically wounded and flew across the battlefield. The remaining tried to retreat or fight back depending upon their courage, but were massacred in less than a minute. General Abe clenched his fist in absolute fury as his men were torn to shreds right before his eyes. What alarmed him more was the fact that majority of the Imperial Guard was now outside the safety of the barrier. His heart skipped a beat when Mangetsu turned around with a vicious smile on his lips while simultaneously finishing a unique set of hand signs. Summoning Jutsu, the Hozuki clan heir now stood upon a giant clam that created a large plume of smoke upon its arrival. Without hesitation, the young boy pointed his hand straight towards the approaching Imperial Guard. Abe had already given the order to retreat upon realizing just what the boy had summoned, having previously heard tales of this beast's powers from mercenary shinobi in the daimyo's retinue who had talked about Genjutsu Hozuki's battle prowess. This was the summon of the previous Mizukage, one which he had also shared with his son and clan heir. Haku, who had been flying alongside the 501st, immediately sped towards the retreating Imperial Guard and quickly performed her own set of hand seals instantly. Makio Hyosho, demonic mirroring ice crystals. Thousands of Imperial guards suddenly found themselves completely surrounded in all directions in a maze of crystal ice mirrors that spanned as far and wide as their eyes could see. Mangetsu then performed the dog sign, making the giant clam unleash a torrent of mist that raced towards the Imperial guard trapped inside Haku's series of ice mirror mazes. General Abe quickly ordered the barrier to be closed once again despite heavy protests from the remaining forces of the Imperial Guard that wanted to help their trapped comrades on the other side. The battlefield turned eerily silent as the mist spread across the entire area until Abe and his remaining forces could not even see anything beyond the barrier. His second-in-command, who was at the edge of the barrier, jerked back in shock when a dozen Imperial guards came crashing out of the mist, a crazed desperation in their eyes as they started attacking the barrier with their spears in a frenzied attempt to get back inside. Soon they were joined by more and more of their brethren as well as mercenary shinobi comrades. "General, we have to help them," begged his second-in-command, earning a sharp glare from the veteran general. "They are under a genjutsu. I have learned about this from Genjutsu Hozuki's history. The clam releases a mist that places anyone that comes into contact with it under a very strong illusion. The caster can manipulate their target's sense of awareness to dangerous levels. The more stronger the caster's will and prowess, the more dangerous illusions he could trap his enemies in," explained the general seriously, but could not help but feel anguished on seeing thousands of his own troops literally dying to get back inside. Some even getting seriously injured when they tried to use their bodies to break through the barrier, which was pure suicidal. Abe was further horrified when a merciless hail of kunai started raining down upon his trapped men, killing them by the dozens right in front of his eyes. If that was not a horrifying sight, the enemy started using explosive kunai, making his men literally explode to shreds right before the eyes of their comrades. The trapped members of the Imperial Guard tried to defend themselves from the incoming attacks, but the mist prevented anybody, including the shinobi, from seeing anything before it was too late. The screams became more desperate and painful, as did the efforts of the remaining survivors to break through the barrier. "General, these are our men. We cannot allow them to be slaughtered like this anymore," begged his second-in-command. "As much as it pains me, we cannot. You open that barrier and we are all dead," reprimanded Abe harshly. "You won't have an army left to fight with if you let them die. Enough of our comrades have died right before us in the siege. General, it's my brother out there. Are you seriously ordering us to watch them die right before our eyes? Open a small window at least for them to pass, if nothing else." General Abe watched the remaining few thousand Imperial Guards start to fiercely protest against his orders as the situation started to become more desperate as more and more men continued to die right before their eyes. He still didn't budge until suddenly he found himself surrounded by spears pointed by his own men. "Let us open the barrier, General," ordered his second-in-command, regret clearly present in the young man's eyes for taking this course of action. The same feeling was present in the eyes of his supporters as a few of Abe's loyalists raised their own weapons against the rebels in order to defend their leader. "You'll have to kill me to give that order, son," answered Abe honestly. A swift and brutal strike to the back of his head made him fall off his horse as a desperate scuffle broke out amongst his own forces. The few still loyal to him engaged the rebels in a desperate melee whilst dragging him away to safety. Abe felt blood trickle down his face and his vision was extremely blurry, and he may have imagined the barrier actually being opened by his impatient second-in-command and his followers. No sooner had that happened, the trapped Imperial Guard on the other side stormed inside, and the very first thing they did was stab those who had just tried to save them. What came next were a series of explosions that completely obliterated hundreds of men in an instant, as Mangetsu Hozuki breached their lines from the sky alongside the 501st Shinobi. "Pick up the pace!" yelled the Hozuki clan heir fiercely. His army that had been following on his heels bulldozed over the disarrayed Imperial Guard with brute force by streaming in through the opening in the barrier. As darkness started to overtake his senses, General Abe knew it was over. Mangetsu landed upon the city walls alongside the 501st as they started engaging the archers, artillery crew and few dozen Imperial swordsmen in melee combat. He parried an attack from one of the men before kicking him harshly, sending him crashing down towards the ground. 3 more charged towards him but were struck down by ice needles courtesy of Haku, who was following right on his heels. He looked at the outer gate where a brutal engagement was taking place between the remaining Imperial Guard and his own army. Jinpachi and Commander Saji were leading the charge, which was going pretty well. "Mangetsu, we must avoid higher casualties on our side. Spare me a few men, gather the rest and capture the daimyo and General Abe if possible. The Imperial Guard will throw down their arms if we have them in custody," advised Haku, as he finished stabbing a terrified archer in the neck. "Will you be able to neutralize the defenders on the wall?" he asked seriously, earning a firm nod from his friend. Mangetsu nodded back as he ordered 50 men from the 501st to continue aiding Haku while he took to the skies with the remaining few hundred, their aim being the royal palace at the far end of the vast city. As he flew towards his target, he watched the devastation unleashed upon his orders personally. Broken buildings, shattered houses, dead people lying in the streets, the wounded crying out in pain, and the bereaved weeping inconsolably over the bodies of their loved ones. One image of two young boys clutching the body of an older crushed male struck his heart more deeply than any blade ever had. He had done this. It was for the sake of the mission, for the sake of victory, for the sake of protecting his army, for the sake of saving his father, and for the sake of this nation's future. However, watching the destruction and misery he had inflicted for those dreams made him truly hate himself somewhere deep in his heart. His own father probably would disapprove, but Mangetsu could live with that as long as he could achieve his goals, letting the Shinigami judge him for his actions in the afterlife if need be. Is this how you felt when you destroyed half of Osaka, Naruto? Were you trying to prevent me from experiencing this pain? Maybe that had been the general's key reason behind ordering him not to take drastic measures which would lead to exactly the collateral losses he was witnessing right now. Actions that would stain his soul for the rest of his life. As a shinobi, he was trained to kill all his enemies. But this was just pure slaughter. Commander, we're approaching the palace. Orders? Asked one of his 501st commandos, bringing him out of his guilt-ridden thoughts. He saw a limited amount of resistance waiting for them in the form of the palace guards preparing to make a final stand against the airborne invaders. Maybe it was the grief over his actions or the fact that he had seen enough death for today. His next words shocked most of his men. Give them a chance to surrender. Eliminate those that still resist and capture General Abe as well as the daimyo alongside his family. Maybe it's too late to honor Naruto's wishes, but avoid unnecessary bloodshed, whispered Mangetsu sadly, as his men went forward to carry out his orders warning the remaining defenders to surrender and keep their lives in return. Mangetsu expanded his sensory powers in order to locate his father's presence inside the palace. All of this, pain and suffering, his sins would be worth bearing once he saved his old man. He had to believe in that, as anything else would surely break his heart. Kirigakure. The first sensation he felt was something soft beneath his back, making him gingerly open his eyes only to be assaulted by the stark white walls, making him groan in displeasure. As his vision slowly cleared, he silently cursed when he found himself back in a plain hospital room. He looked at himself and found nearly 2 tubes attached to his arm and quite a few of his body parts wrapped in bandages. Fuck! He cursed in a hoarse voice. A light chuckle made him go on an instant alert as a man emerged from beneath the hospital floor with his familiar but haunting red eyes staring directly at him. You, he whispered hesitantly, and glanced at the door to his room, but neither of the twin guards stationed outside were alarmed by the intrusion. Do you really think I'll let children interfere? Asked the older man with a smirk, which made Naruto sigh. How long was I out? Questioned the blonde seriously. More than a week actually. Impressive battle, taking down 2 biju at once. Not an easy feat and much better than your past performance, but still there is a lot of scope for improvement, commented Madara, earning a raised eyebrow from Naruto. High and mighty, are we? Taunted Naruto, making Madara chuckle once again. Not at all. There will always be room to grow more stronger. It applies to me as well since the enemies I seek to destroy are in a league of their own. You are good but not invincible, advised Madara frankly. He saw Naruto didn't say anything and sensed the lingering sadness in the blonde's heart. So you know the truth about your wife and child, said Madara sympathetically. I guess you are happy to be proven right, retorted Naruto bitterly, only for Madara to lower his head solemnly. I don't cherish it, boy. I know what it's like to lose family to this cursed shinobi world. It's why I want to change it, admitted Madara without hesitation. I made a lot of mistakes in my life. If only I could go back in time and change things, whispered Naruto wishfully. Even if you can bring the dead back to life, they'll still be coming back to this cursed shinobi world and suffer in time sooner or later, once again pointed Madara, earning a hesitant nod from the blonde for the first time. I want to understand your plan and whether you can truly give me what I desire, declared Naruto. A genuine smile arrived on the Uchiha's face as he stepped towards the boy to take up a seat near his bed. First, we need to break the one nation, one village shinobi system across the world. I started this war and helped fend the previous one with that objective but have met with limited success, honestly. I control the Land of Lightning's political leadership and most of their top shinobi command, and while they are a great military force, they simply lack the brilliance and sheer audacity to break the Land of Fire, the originator of this system, explained Madara seriously. Naruto attentively listened and was further intrigued on learning that Madara had played an important role in forming an alliance between the Land of Lightning, Earth, and Wind by manipulating their leaders from the shadows. Yet even the combined might of those three great villages was struggling to crush the Land of Fire and Konoha's sheer might thanks to the Uchiha, Senju and many other noble ninja clans, their daimyo's vast wealth, army and resources and good leadership. The Land of Fire had suffered great casualties and lost some territory, but they had formed an alliance with Kirigakure, and were preparing for a counterattack on their enemies to go deep into their lines and crush them completely. You may not be the strongest shinobi but are a brilliant general and a man of honor. Your tactical brilliance, your courage and the determination to succeed against all odds makes men follow you into hell itself. Instead of a ninja world crushed under the dominance of the Land of Fire, I want you and Kirigakure to take up that mantle. Unite all shinobi and warriors of the world under one banner. Stop letting daimyos and politicians use us for their personal gains. Show the world a new path. Encouraged Madara sincerely. You're stronger than me, your name inspires fear even now. Why not take up the mantle yourself? Questioned Naruto, earning a faint smile from the Uchiha. I am not fit for it. Not even my own clan trusted me when I told them about the dangers of living under Senju rule would bring for them. No, a role in the shadows suits me better. Most of all, there is a limit to how much a human being can be motivated by fear. True respect and loyalty will make them go till death and beyond, something which I see you can inspire in nearly anyone. The fact that you make me want to believe in you is a testament to your brilliance. The Mizukage was a fool to let such a gem go to waste. You would have made a fine Mizukage, but now you'll be an even better Mizukage, confessed Madara. Did you play a role in this coup? What happened to Lord Genjutsu? Questioned Naruto suspiciously, making Madara sigh. I did fan the flames, for I believed it's you and not Genjutsu who could lead Kirigakure to its true destiny. Genjutsu is dead, killed by Yagura and the Kage matriarch. I had no desire to kill him but gave him a merciful death when those fools were torturing him and preparing for a public execution, admitted Madara frankly. Naruto narrowed his gaze at the rather candid confession, his thoughts lingering over the former Mizukage who had been a far better mentor and leader to him than his own Mizukage. He could not stop some bitterness and mistrust to be born in his heart for Madara, something which the man caught sight of easily. Idealism won't get you anywhere. As long as Genjutsu ruled, you would never be allowed to do as you please completely. If you're so repulsed by my actions, then tell me, what is your plan to bring peace and unity to this war-torn world? Questioned Madara in an irate tone. I want to unite all shinobi of this world under one banner. Even if it means crushing and merging all nations, I will do it, declared Naruto, earning a surprised look from Madara. Pretty ambitious. Some would say uniting all shinobi would end most conflicts, but if there is no conflict there would be no need for ninjas to exist, countered Madara. But the blonde in front of him shook his head. Their talents would still be needed. Shinobi can create lands, irrigation, electricity, solve water crisis, make even the most harshest and inhabitable lands suitable for settlement. We can act as the guardians of mankind that we were supposed to be, instead of indulging in endless conflicts for limited resources and political ambitions of feudal lords, explained Naruto honestly. Pretty logical and admirable dream. But there will always be many shinobi who live to ignite conflicts. They would prefer a never-ending saga of wars instead of a peace lasting forever. Even if you unite mankind under one banner through your brilliance and power, even if you are able to somehow make everyone understand your vision for your humanity, you will die someday. Will your successors be able to sustain your legacy that you built? What if you die before achieving your dream, just like the Sage of Six Paths did? Who shall carry your dreams forward then? Asked Madara frankly. The Uchiha watched the boy struggle for an answer to those serious questions, only to avert his gaze when he couldn't come up with any. I say this from experience. I had a dear friend once, one who also wanted to stop wars and unite shinobi. He tried his best and did manage to bring temporary peace, only to be betrayed by shinobi themselves in the end. His successors unable to sustain his legacy and carry forward his dreams of maintaining a peaceful world. He was a god amongst men. No shinobi, including myself, were not his equals, and yet he still failed. I see him in you along with some part of my own younger self, confessed Madara honestly. The blonde looked up at the older man, having a very good idea of whom he had been referring to. Remembering the history of his past, he couldn't help but feel those words were true to an extent. How do you plan to bridge the gap in my plan? Asked Naruto hesitantly. Madara smiled as he projected his visual prowess, making Naruto appear inside a plain white dimension. Before he could ask further questions, he saw both him and Madara appear high in the sky as a very realistic ninja world map was created below them. For my plan to succeed, the ninja system and the 5 great nations need to collapse first. It is why I started this war and need your help, for in you I see a true conqueror. Not just in power but also the mind and heart. You are an exceptional shinobi, a great general, and always lead from the front. The kind of a leader any true warrior would love to follow. Naruto watched a great army led by him march from Kirigakure to first invade the land of lightning, crushing Kumogakure, and unifying the smaller ninja villages around it eventually. The conquest continued gloriously as his new larger army eventually marched into the land of earth and wind while taking over the remaining smaller ninja villages. The journey ending with the final conquest of the land of fire and Konohagakure. Unite every nation under one banner with my help, but more importantly help me capture all the tailed beasts or major portion of each of their powers. By combining their powers with my visual prowess, I will reawaken the 10 tails and become its Jinchuriki. When that has happened, I will use its power to join every human being to each other by interlinking their connection to a new hive chakra network. I will then order humanity to cease its infighting and cooperate under the new world you shall create. No man would ever be able to attack another for any purpose. An end to all wars, explained Madara seriously. But that's, whispered Naruto hesitantly, too extreme? How is it different from you imposing your own will on this world by crushing all nations to create a united one? You can try to control this united nation that you shall build with your own power alone. Continue fighting endless conflicts, for there will always be quite a few who just wouldn't accept your rule. Those battles would make you suffer the loss of more friends and family. Your descendants doomed to repeat that cycle again and again until eventually your legacy and dreams get destroyed with time. Sometimes to expect the best from everyone is arrogance. Hashirama made that mistake. Would you repeat the same? Questioned Madara, his gaze boring into the blonde's eyes. What is to stop you from taking over the world? With the 10 tails power, you could possibly control every human, including myself. A puppet ruler? You are just the same as the Mizukage and the others, accused Naruto bitterly, earning a furious snarl from the Uchiha. Fool! I have no desire to rule or control everything humanity does. I just want an end to all wars, to create a lasting peace and unite mankind so they could face the Otsutsuki threat once they arrive. You can rule the world for as long as you live, followed by your descendants. I just want to achieve my dream, reiterated Madara fiercely. And I have to believe your word? Retorted Naruto, distrust evident in his gaze, making the older Uchiha growl in frustration. There must be something that can make you trust me. Is bringing your dead wife back to life a good reason? Asked Madara frankly, and saw the resistance in the boy's eyes diminish greatly. How can you do that? And what about my unborn child? Asked Naruto hesitantly, the hope clearly evident in his softened gaze. The Rinnegan and a special statue under my control gives me the power to bring the dead back to life. Although I am not sure if I can bring your unborn child back since it died before it was born, admitted Madara. Naruto had expected something like this, but it still came as a heavy blow regardless. A part of his heart had hoped to see his firstborn child, but now it would never be possible. All because of this cursed world and shinobi system. Madara pressed on, seeing the boy's sorrow. Help me achieve my goal. The more you succeed, the more I shall help you regain all you have lost. Crush the land of lightning and I shall bring all your Spartan comrades, including your beloved younger brother, back to life. Conquer the land of earth and wind while subjugating the smaller villages, then I will help you correct the injustice done to you by Yuzu and its Kage. Maybe even bring your mother and adoptive father Yahiko Uzumaki back to life if you wish. Finally dissolve the land of fire and I shall bring Ino Yamanaka back to life so you can finally live with her in a truly peaceful world, said Madara passionately. Naruto watched images of all those people flash before his eyes in this genjutsu. Everyone who had believed in him, everyone whom he had failed. He saw their smiles and the happiness in their eyes as they got to live the life they all deserved, something which this cruel world took away. Hadn't he fought his entire life for his beloved ones only to lose them, and be betrayed by his own superiors and shinobi system he had fought for so loyally? Madara watched a lone tear roll down the boy's cheeks as he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He walked forward and stepped in front of the blonde, extending his hand towards the last Namikaze. Will you fight for the lost? Will you help me destroy this world of lies and help me create one of victors and truth? Questioned Madara seriously. A pair of dark red slit-patterned eyes gazed back at him, a sea of determination and ruthlessness burning in them as a firm hand gripped his offered one, making the Uchiha truly smile. From this day forth, the world shall remember you for eternity as the Black Flash, declared Madara proudly. A world of peace, a world of truth and harmony. We shall create such a world, promised Naruto fiercely, earning a firm nod from the older man in front of him. Yes, as the descendants of the Sage of Six Paths, as the heirs of Uchiha and Senju clans, we shall destroy this world of lies and make mankind reach its true destiny. One that was stolen from us, agreed Madara readily. The vision disappeared and he found himself back in the hospital room as Madara got up from his bed. I know you dislike Tobirama Senju, which is also one of the reasons why you were so keen to recruit me, said Naruto frankly, receiving a slightly surprised and even more respectful look from Madara. Perceptive, but then again you have your father's intelligence, commented Madara carefully. You are not to harm him or the Senju clan personally or through any of your aides. Should they choose to stand in the way of our goals, I shall be the one to deal with them, proposed Naruto seriously. Do you still feel some loyalty towards them since they are family? Questioned Madara with a heavy frown arriving on his face. Not likely. Not after what happened, but there is no need to be unnecessarily cruel. Even to our enemies, after all they shall too exist in the new world we shall create, answered Naruto honestly. Madara was genuinely surprised upon hearing those words and made him look at the boy in a different light. Even if they don't show you the same kindness? He questioned, making Naruto smile. Yes, even then. Leave the Senju to me, answered Naruto. You're way too kind for your own good, just like Hashirama was, whispered Madara with a heavy sigh. Or maybe I am too tired being merciless. The Uchiha couldn't help but see a shadow of his deceased best friend in the young boy. His next words also making him feel the resemblance he bared to Madara's own younger self. I couldn't protect my family or friends, yet I have still someone left to care for. Someone who knows the real me before I became what I am today. Help me save her first, requested Naruto sincerely. He received a gentle and understanding nod from Madara in return. Kushina Uzumaki slowly opened her eyes to find herself seated in an uncomfortable chair. Slowly regaining more of her vision, she found herself to be currently present in a hospital room. Trying to recall how she ended up here only made her come up with absolutely nothing. What had she been doing that made her land up here? Till the end? She blinked in surprise upon hearing those familiar words and found an old friend seated in another corner of the room. Tears welled up in her eyes as she glanced at his state even as she dashed towards his bed. He engulfed her in a fierce hug and she clung to him as if her life depended upon it. She remembered how she alongside the rest of the Kiri villagers had been forbidden from assisting the rebels in the battle by Yagura. She had watched those two Biju nearly kill her oldest and sole surviving friend. Gently breaking the hug, she looked at his injuries and thankfully most were healing at a steady rate. His chakra however felt weaker than before, and some of his once shiny blonde hair had grayed out, which only made more tears fall from her eyes. I'm not dead yet, Kushina, he reprimanded her gently. I wish I could have joined you in that battle, she whispered, regret clearly echoing in her voice. That would blow away your cover here. I don't want that to happen to any agent, especially you, answered Naruto, the fate of his own wifino still fresh in his heart. If only her cover had not been blown. She looked at the twin guards stationed outside the room, but he told her an ally of theirs had ordered them to simply ignore the happenings inside this room. We have a lot to discuss, he said carefully, and tried to reach for the water jug on a table nearby. Kushina quickly got up from the bed and handed him the same, earning a grateful smile in return. How did your mission go? She asked once he was finished drinking his water. The somber look in his eyes did not give her much hope, and her worst fears were proven true when she heard the entire tale. It started with the events at Nagi Island and his meeting with their deceased Spartan comrades through Edo Tensei, a forbidden reanimation kenjutsu developed by the second Hokage. Kushina's face lost all color as she heard of what really went down, and just how the revived Nagato now felt towards Yuza after what it had done to his two best friends. How? She whispered in a trembling voice, tears welling up in her eyes on remembering their lost comrades. Naruto's own eyes were moist as he grabbed her hands gently to take into his own, the two last surviving Spartans taking solace in each other. He was the only one in the entire world who could exactly understand her feelings towards their martyred comrades. Both of them had chosen different paths, and yet deep in their hearts they did what they did to get justice for their friends. She could only imagine how seeing them after so many years must have felt like. I know what the Mizukage did to you, Ghost, whispered Naruto sadly. What? She asked confusedly. I asked you to go and live a peaceful life in Yuza after our meeting in the Land of Lightning. You honored my wish and went home only to end up here in Kirigakure weeks later. Why is that? Questioned Naruto. Kushina froze when Naruto pointed at a large scar on her left arm. The skin there was hot red and recovering from whatever wound she had suffered. Gingerly touching it made her shiver as faint echoes came back in her mind. A cold dark room, distant voices, and a familiar voice whispering in her ears. Nagato and Madara told me what the Mizukage did to you when you tried to clear my name and reveal the truth about us Spartans to our people. He placed a curse mark upon you that forced you to do his bidding and manipulated your memories to drive you away from the village and keep an eye on me. Maybe even use you to take me out should I step out of line, killing two birds with one stone, explained Naruto seriously. I don't understand, Madara, as in Madara Uchiha? And why would the Mizukage, she said hurriedly, but he placed his hands upon her shoulders comfortingly. I'll tell you everything, and he did. By the end, Kushina was left speechless, her mind literally spinning after discovering so many shocking truths. Tobirama being her best friend's real father, what Yuzu did to her, Madara's interest in her friend and his grand plan for the world. Her heart, however, broke and wept for what her friend and the man she loved still had endured all on his own. The death of his beloved wife and unborn child, the betrayal by his own nation and family, the turning of his last true friend. It made her understand exactly as to why he had now joined Madara in his grand plan to change this cursed world. I'm so sorry, Minato, she whispered tearfully, using his birth name without hesitation as whatever he was today or would become in the future. She still saw the same boy whom she grew up and fell in love with. I'll make this right somehow, everything. No matter how long it takes or what pain I may face, I shall keep moving forward until my enemies are destroyed. I'll bring back everyone we lost, and then maybe. He stopped himself, but she clearly felt the unsaid hope in his heart. I'm with you, she whispered earnestly, making him look at her in shock. No! I don't want to get you involved in this. It is my sin to bear. All I ever want is for you to live free and be happy. You have already been hurt enough in your life because of me, he argued, but she shook her head with tears welling up in her eyes once more. Yet being away from you is much worse, Minato. I left you twice, once on my own decision and the next time on your wish, and was never truly happy either of those times, she replied back fiercely, making him growl in frustration. Everyone I loved or care for dies. The path I have chosen will only increase the dangers. I won't risk your life for the sake of my ambition, he protested angrily. A tight slap to his face sent him reeling and made him look at his redhead childhood friend hesitantly as tears openly fell down across her cheeks. And I can't lose you. What you desire is also something I seek myself now after having lost nearly everything. If Madara can help us bring back our friends and end this war-torn world, then I want to be a part of it too. I may not be a great general like you or a beast like that Uchiha, but I can still be useful. I'll keep the Mizukage off your back now, and be your protector in this village full of strangers, proposed Kushina earnestly. Kushina saw some of his opposition melt away and a genuine smile arrive on his lips, which made her push on by placing her hands upon his cheeks. Till the end, remember? A lone tear slipped from his eye as he leaned into her touch completely, a relieved sigh escaping from his lips as she caressed his cheek and came closer. He looked into her eyes and saw a person who knew the real him, what he truly desired, and didn't judge him for it. His heart truly melted upon seeing her resolve and affection for him, someone who wanted to stand by him no matter what. Someone whom he could be completely honest with, a woman who chose him over everything else. Even Ino had chosen to protect her nation by sacrificing her life alongside their child's. Even Tobirama had indirectly or directly decided to protect his village and comrades no matter how wrong they were. But not her. In this world full of lies and betrayal, she wanted to be the one who stayed true to him over everything else. Why go so far, Kushina? For someone like me, he whispered somberly. The same reason you stayed true to me in this world of lies. His eyes widened in shock upon hearing those words and her beautiful smile, which made him lower his gaze. I have loved you more than anything, Minato. You are my family, and even if the entire world turns against you someday, I will still be your ally, she promised him, repeating the words he had said to her before she left the land of lightning to return to Yuzu in order to honor his wish. She watched him struggle for a response which made her smile and hide her own sadness when he didn't reciprocate her feelings. Her eyes widened when he came forward and kissed her lips passionately, blending everything he felt for her in his actions even if no words ever escaped from his lips. She returned his feelings by kissing him back, content in having this moment of bliss in a life full of suffering and tragedy. Chapter 37. A New Dawn. A New Dawn. Standing atop the hospital's rooftop, Naruto silently glanced at the moon shining in the night sky. After a few moments, his gaze shifted towards the mist village spread all around him as the conversation with Madara came back in his heart. He had decided to team up with that man and had even used his powers to free Kushina from the curse mark bestowed by the Mizukage in order to keep an eye on him by controlling her. But could he really trust that Uchiha to hold up his end of the bargain? He had his doubts as to whether Madara could truly bring his deceased loved ones back to life, and only time would tell if the man spoke the truth. He still didn't like the way in which most people saw him, a great general. He may have proven his prowess on the battlefield leading armies, but that only showed his capability to destroy his enemies in armed conflict. As far as politics and the art of ruling went, he had a lot to learn if he hoped to succeed in his efforts. He blinked when Kushina appeared beside him with a quick shunshin and grabbed a seat wordlessly. They want me to be the fourth Mizukage, he admitted to her. Figured as much. They would be foolish not to offer you this after the way you won and your past deeds. Word has also arrived that Mangetsu and his army triumphed. The capital and this country is now yours, she congratulated him with a bright smile. Kushina frowned when it only made him silently stare at the vast landscape in front of him. Why not name you third Mizukage, as was your original role and one designated by Lord Genjetsu? She asked in order to bring his attention back to the important topic. Something about letting Yugura's short-lived reign as the third Mizukage be etched into the village's history as a reminder to future generations. The man also killed or tortured quite a few from the village who tried to oppose him. Would be strange if people are forced to call me Sandame the same as that man. I guess people really need a fresh start, answered Naruto honestly. Yandame, huh? Anybody who will challenge this? Questioned his friend. Just Mangetsu. The rest don't have the courage or strength. I'll handle him, replied Naruto straightforwardly. She paused and watched him glance at the moon in the night sky with a longing gaze. What are you thinking? She asked him gently. Do you think someday we'll be able to glance beyond our petty issues? There is a whole galaxy out there waiting to be explored, and here we are fighting for petty things while the Otsutsuki, if they exist, are out conquering entire planets and solar systems, he whispered thoughtfully. Maybe it's because humanity hasn't found a leader yet who could show them their real destiny is out there in the stars. I agree with you. We are always fighting for this piece or that piece of land or resources or grudges. There is plenty for every one of us in this universe. We just don't know how to get it, even if we have the power. I think you can do it, she encouraged him, making him chuckle. Me? Who couldn't even protect his family, friends, or unborn child? He argued, some despair evident in his voice, which made her sigh. You are a good man and a great leader, but your fatal flaw is your lack of belief in yourself. Never hesitate, that's what we were taught as Spartans. Have you forgotten that? Reminded Kushina. He remained silent, and it was then she saw the scars left on his very psyche by the events of his painful life. Despite how hard he had tried or sacrificed, he always ended up losing what was dear to him, which affected his belief in his own abilities. Giving up is worse than defeat. What is that you truly fear? She asked seriously. I don't want to end up creating a system far worse than the current one. The battlefield I understand much more than I would like. It's what comes after those victories that worries me, and whether I'll do the right thing or end up just like the leaders of today whom I despise, he admitted, earning an understanding nod from his friend. Kushina glanced at the vast village surrounding the two of them, and then glanced back at the handsome man she loved dearly. If you help end the current war in Kiri and Konoha's favor, you can stay here in Kirigakure. You'll most probably find a good woman to marry, have a family of your own. In the end, you'll probably die a celebrated man, the finest this nation would ever see in a long time. But sooner or later, your wishes will be forgotten and your descendants probably will continue enduring the current vicious cycle. And if you follow Madara's plan, an uncertain path awaits you. One full of hardship and even pain, yet one that will help you actually change the world and bring back the ones you lost to life. Victory and eternal glory would be yours. Your name will live on in the hearts of men long after you are gone from this world. Your reforms, great or terrible, will impact the future generations of humanity for centuries, but you'll not be able to live a peaceful life. Naruto looked up to glance at his friend, who in turn was now looking at the village before them with a hopeful smile. The glory and memory of mankind shall always belong to the ones who followed their great visions. Like the sage of six paths, Hashirama Senju, and the greatest of them all that united this world, the Black Flash, whispered Kushina hopefully. The greatest shinobi of the world. She looked at him, and he was rendered speechless by the sheer level of confidence in her eyes. It was almost the same as the one he saw in Madara. Maybe these people saw something in him which he himself couldn't. For better or worse, he knew which path was the one his heart truly desired despite his fears as he looked at the stars in the night sky after getting back on his feet. Imperium of man, he whispered thoughtfully with a smile. Kushina blinked in surprise on hearing his declaration and was about to chuckle until she saw the determination burning in his eyes as his right hand voluntarily reached for the stars. I'll conquer it all. My enemies, my fears, the 5 great nations and this world. You're right, I'll follow my vision with the support of my comrades and let mankind and history be my judge, declared Naruto with absolute determination. She nodded and watched as he took his first steps towards a dream that would probably change everyone's fate. Imperial capital. Mangetsu sat alone in the daimyo's royal courtroom, its once magnificent carpet stained with copious amount of blood, and right from the entrance towards the royal throne lay a series of pikes upon which were the severed heads of the former feudal lord, all his consorts, each of his relatives, and all his children including the youngest one aged 7. The royal family was extinct now, and yet it didn't satisfy the hole in his heart and the undying rage within his very soul as he glanced at the decorated casket near the throne holding the mortal remains of his beloved father. He could still not forget the sight of seeing his tortured corpse lying there in the dungeons, his wounds and scars a clear indication he had suffered terribly in his final hours. He looked outside the window to see dozens of fire raging across the city, as he had not stopped his men from extracting their vengeance upon the daimyo's advisors alongside their entire clans for their crimes. He for one simply didn't care as the reason for which he had fought, the reason for which he had stained his hands with the blood of hundreds of innocents, lied in a box right beside him. He won the battle yet lost everything. He had rebuffed Haku's attempts at consolation and had locked himself in this room for the past 2 days after slaughtering the daimyo and his entire family with his own hands. Mangetsu. He looked up from the depths of his despair to see the one person he wanted to avoid for as long as possible but couldn't, as Naruto Namikaze now stood before him. Teleportation. You used the kunai you gave to Amuri earlier to transport yourself here the moment you heard about the capital's fall, whispered the young Hozuki heir lifelessly. The blonde looked at the grotesque display all around him, followed by the coffin resting near to the boy. With a heavy sigh he walked towards it and knelt respectfully. I heard about what they did to Lord Second. He didn't deserve any of it, whispered Naruto sadly, as he gently placed his hand upon the coffin. Still doesn't change what happened, does it? Asked Mangetsu bitterly. No, replied the blonde honestly. Why is it that good men like him meet such fate, while monsters like us continue to survive? Asked the younger boy hatefully. Because this world is cruel. He looked at the blonde as he arrived by his side and silently took a seat. Did you feel the same rage and pain that I feel now after what had happened to your wife and child? He asked hesitantly. Worse, whispered Naruto truthfully. I couldn't follow your orders, not after what happened to my father. I even encouraged the men to do what they did for revenge. Do what you want to do with me, confessed Mangetsu truthfully. I hardly have any right to chastise you after murdering half of Osaka. I only wanted you to not experience this pain alongside protecting innocence. Revenge never does fully heal the hole in one's heart, admitted Naruto. Then what does? Asked Mangetsu honestly. Fighting for something we can truly believe in. Lord Genjutsu is gone, but his dream of this nation is not. A dream which we have to fulfill no matter the cost, answered Naruto. For the first time in days, tears welled up in the broken younger's boys as the blonde beside him placed a firm yet comforting hand upon his shoulder. It's the system, Mangetsu. We shinobi are used by daimyos all across the world for their self-interests. I intend to break that system, revealed Naruto. He loved you. He never said it out loud, but I could see it in his eyes. The way he looked at you, you were the son he wanted, whispered Mangetsu miserably, making the blonde shake his head. I was a follower, somebody who shared his will for this nation. You were his flesh and blood, the sole legacy left by his beloved wife. There was nobody he loved more than you. Deep down you know it to be true, encouraged Naruto with a faint smile. Mangetsu didn't say anything as both men remained seated in comfortable silence for nearly half an hour. What will you do now? Asked the Hozuki clan heir after a while. The village wants me to be the 4th Mizukage, replied the blonde. You were my father's chosen successor, and there is nobody better suited than you in the village currently, agreed Mangetsu with a nod. Is that something you would be okay with? Questioned Naruto seriously, and looked straight into the younger boy's eyes. It's what father wanted, and I also feel that you will be a good choice. But I do need something from you in return, stated Mangetsu without hesitation. You want Yagura and Raikage's head for executing Lord Second? Asked Naruto frankly. The dark and merciless smile he received from Mangetsu would have unnerved many who knew the boy. But Naruto could understand there was nothing but pain and revenge burning inside the boy's heart right now, just like it had consumed him for a decade, and even now after what had happened to his own family. Death will be mercy. They made my father suffer horribly. It's only justice that I return the act tenfold. Same goes for their clans, I decide their fate. Give me that, demanded Mangetsu murderously. What will you do with them? I was hoping to use them as useful pawns for our invasion of the Land of Lightning, said Naruto seriously. All the better. Blood for blood has always been the way of Kirigakure. You'll have your pawns, replied Mangetsu coldly. He watched as Naruto got back on his feet, and gave him a firm nod which made him get up and offer a respectful salute. A world of peace and truth. A world of victors. Let us create such a dream, said Naruto fiercely, as he offered his right hand towards the younger boy. A firm handshake was his answer. Kirigakure. 2 days later, Naruto and the 7 ninja swordsmen alongside nearly every ninja of their village somberly stood at attention as the burial ceremony of the Second Mizukage was completed. The man was put to rest beside the grave of his beloved wife who had died well before him, with their only son now standing near his parents' resting place in silence. Naruto wanted to make it a grand ceremony, but Mangetsu had forbidden it since his late father was never fond of such fanfare. There were no speeches either, as each of the ninja present here held some part of the blame for their Kage meeting an early and disgraceful end. No shinobi should die such a way. Personally, Naruto himself would prefer to go out fighting if it ever came to that. Just like his parents, his brother, the Spartans, and his beloved wife had done, her empty grave lying in another corner of the very same cemetery, her real body resting peacefully in her own village alongside their unborn child. The ones responsible for Genjetsu's death, the Karatachi, Hagoromo, and Kagaya clans, were imprisoned alongside their respective leaders except for Lord Hiro Hagoromo, who had perished by Naruto's own hand. While they were vital to the village's strength, their open rebellion could not go unpunished. He doubted simply executing the clan heads would be enough for Mangetsu, and his suspicions were proven correct as when the ceremony ended, the now Hozuki clan head approached him. The rest of the 7 ninja swordsmen joined them moments later and looked at him expectantly. "What do we do with the prisoners?" asked Haku coldly, for once her soft heart devoid of any mercy after seeing the way they had executed their previous Kage, and abused her own father alongside members of her clan. Naruto nodded at the question as the group watched a beautiful redhead approach them. It was another one of his gambles, but one which both of them had agreed to in order to have someone watch his back and keep his cover from any in Kiri trying to blow it. "Her name's Kaori Uzumaki. A mercenary who has offered her services to us," introduced Naruto calmly, making the redhead Kunoichi give an acknowledging nod towards the other swordsman who looked at her suspiciously. "A rogue ninja?" asked Zabuza with a frown. "I do know how to fight but was never a ninja, to be honest. I was part of Yuza's Fuinjutsu research team until I learned freelancing my services to more prospective parties offered much better pay. Yagura summoned me for a meeting, but by the time I reached here your general had taken over. So I gave him my offer instead," answered Kushina with a confidence and calm that even surprised her former Spartan comrade. But then again, she had spent a decade as a spy in the land of Lightning Daimyo's court. Something which would come in handy during the planned invasion. "Can we really trust someone like her?" questioned Yuri, distaste evident in her harsh tone. "I only work with those who offer me what I deserve, otherwise I walk away." "If you don't trust me, there is no deal and I go," replied Kushina without a flinch. "Or we can just force you to give up your secrets?" threatened Jinpachi, leaking some of his killing intent to intimidate the redhead, which only made her give him an ice-cold smile. "Oh? Care to act on your threat?" she challenged. The swordsman moved swiftly, but before he could even get close, he simply disappeared in a puff of smoke as a green-colored scroll emerged on the ground, one which the redhead summoned into her hand swiftly while looking at the swords pointed at her by the other swordsman. "Is that enough of a display? You don't want your comrade to suffocate, do you?" asked Kushina icily. "Release him or die," barked Yuri furiously. The other swordsman looked at Naruto, who had not yet raised his weapon, as had Mangetsu, who was looking at the redhead with a curious glint in his eyes. What they all didn't know was that both Kushina and their current leader had planned this entire little ordeal, and it was going exactly as per their plan. "Release Jinpachi and maybe we can talk business," offered Mangetsu calmly, while looking at Naruto at the same time, who also nodded his consent, making the others look at the two of them as if they had lost their mind. Kushina instantly released the trapped swordsman, and before any further questions could be asked or protests made, or before Jinpachi could enact his vengeance, he was stopped by none other than Mangetsu himself. "You have made your point. We'll consider hiring your services on one condition," proposed Mangetsu. The others stopped from voicing their protests by a harsh look from Naruto himself. "Name it," said Kushina. The Hozuki clan head looked at the future Mizukage for a second before glancing back at the redhead. "Can you help us give our enemies a fate worse than death?" he asked. Kushina subtly glanced at Naruto, who had already told her about Mangetsu's desires, and together they had come up with a plan that would not just satisfy the boy but also help their future war strategy. With the Hagoromo, Kagaya, and Karatachi clans imprisoned, it left the Hozuki clan as the strongest ninja clan of Kirigakure. Their support, along with those of the remaining clans like the Terumi and Yuki, were of great importance for Naruto to formally establish his rule. Other factions, namely the Umbu Black Ops, firmly supported him since he was one of their own, while the Hunter Corps also was on his side thanks to the sacrifice of Ino, who had been a member in their ranks. Most of the common ninja already liked him. The Hozukis wanted revenge. The Terumis wanted him to marry their heirs to forge a political alliance and offer their current clan head had made personally once the capital fell. The Yukis would be satisfied with more power and prestige. With the mass execution of the daimyo alongside his advisors and all their families, the remaining feudal nobility was scared to death of the ninjas doing the same to their factions should they rebel. With General Abe the finest of the feudal military leaders currently imprisoned, and the Imperial Guard broken, any form of resistance was effectively crushed. If they played their cards right, then his next victory to achieve his true dream could soon become a reality. I can promise Kushina without hesitation. What do you say, Naruto? Asked Mangetsu seriously. The Karatachi clan led the rebellion with their clan head acting as the de facto leader of the rebels. All members except Yugura are to be executed right before his eyes. When that's done, Koryu shall subdue his will with your sealing techniques. He'll wish for death, but he'll continue to suffer, as he made Lord Genjutsu suffer. We shall use him and his Jinchuriki prowess in an upcoming suicidal mission in the Land of Lightning, declared Naruto mercilessly, earning a nod from Kushina. Not one of his comrades raised any objection or looked conflicted with that brutal decision, with Mangetsu even looking extremely pleased. What about the other rebel clans? Asked Haku after a few moments, referring to the Hagoromo and Kage clans. Their children and non-combatants will be kept hostage within the village. Their fighters can take part in the suicide mission we shall launch from Osaka alongside Yugura if they wish to save their clans and ever hope to regain any semblance of respect in this village. Most of them would likely perish in battle if the Land of Lightning falls for our ruse and sends most of their military might to stop what they will perceive to be a deep incursion, while our true forces will secretly attack their dear village and feudal capital when their forces are depleted. Have the remnants of the Imperial Guard also joined this suicide mission? I heard they like to fight lost battles. General Abe shall lead this expendable force if he wants to save his own family. If he's good as you say, Mangetsu, then maybe he'll just save this army of traitors from getting completely annihilated, ordered Naruto with a cold smile. When he had proposed this military action to Konoha, he had wondered just which troops he would have to risk for such a maneuver. For once destiny had worked in his favor, combining the remaining survivors from the Kage, Hagoromo, few ninjas that supported them and the Imperial Guard, he would just have close enough to 7,000 fighters. More than the exact number he needed for this diversion. And if they actually survive this suicide mission? Asked Kisame curiously. They'll continue running high-risk missions until we win the war, that is if they want to protect their families. Still have each of them be branded with curse marks. Should they try to rebel once again, they can be put down like the vermin they are, proposed Mangetsu. I can arrange for that, assured Kushina. I suppose it's better than simply executing them. At least this way they can still be useful to our cause and to the village they betrayed, agreed Haku. They won't forget it, especially their children who may become a threat in the future. I say we kill them all, protested Amiri, earning a nod from Kisame and a nonchalant shrug from Zabuza and Jinpachi. They all looked at the man who would be making that decision as their leader and the future ruler of their nation. To their surprise, Naruto simply smiled. We are not savages. Let the children live. If they develop a vengeful heart and grow up to take revenge, let them try. Those consequences shall be theirs and mine to deal with, answered Naruto simply. When he didn't receive any opposition to his proposal, he confirmed Kushina's services before starting to walk away until he stopped halfway and looked at the remaining swordsman with a dark and challenging smirk over his lips. The same goes for all of you. If you ever feel the same way, come and face me. You're joking, General, whispered Haku, earning a brief chuckle from the blonde before he walked away. The sound of his retreating footsteps keeping the remaining swordsmen frozen in their place, as they clearly understood the unsaid threat left by their new leader. October 10th. 20 years after Kirigakure's formation, Mei Terumi found herself standing among the thousands upon thousands of people, not just from her own village, but also from all parts of the country that had arrived here only for this occasion. Having been recently discharged from the hospital and being freed from the sealing jutsu used by Yagura to control her by an Uzumaki mercenary of all people, she had barely reunited with her freed father and learned just how the rebels had been crushed before another development surprised her even more. She had not yet got a chance to talk to the man who had saved her life, or even catch a glimpse of him this past entire month since he had been busy dealing with the traitors, restoring order within Kirigakure and the rest of the country. Now that those tasks were completed, the moment had finally come. The fourth Mizukage. For the first time in their nation's history and even in that of this world, a shinobi had taken complete control of an entire nation and overthrown the feudal leadership. It was a feat unheard of, especially for a nation as large as their own. She could only imagine the shockwave it would have caused across the rest of the world and the remaining great nations. It was the dawn of a new era. Even before formally assuming office, the new leader of their nation had done what his predecessors and previous feudal masters had failed to accomplish. After having united the ninja and civilian forces under his command by crushing out remaining pockets of rebellion, he stripped the remaining civilian nobility previously loyal to the daimyo from all their assets and titles. Any that tried to oppose this decision were never heard from again. Instead of keeping the newfound wealth along with the royal treasury of the previous daimyo for himself, the new leadership actually used nearly half the funds for the welfare of the impoverished people of their nation. The ninja clans from Kirigakyo like the Terumi, Hozuki, and Yuki actually spread across the entire nation bearing these gifts from the new ruler for the people. It didn't end there, as all the ninjas were ordered to complete providing all the basic amenities their new Kage felt were necessary for the welfare of their people. Food storage, trade routes, road development, water reservoirs, education centers, hospitals and local clinics, establishment of local garrison centers in each key cluster, setting up police forces, and so much more. In the 1 month since the daimyo's fall, their nation had undergone a change nobody had ever dreamed of. A change led by shinobi themselves, which was enough to make the common masses forgive the innocents lost in the capital's fall and the brutal execution of the daimyo, and his aides who had hoarded all the power and wealth only for themselves. Their new Kage had displayed great insight by actually working for the people first before formally assuming office. He had even used the time before his coronation to actually reorganize the military for the next phase of the war. Instead of having the non-shinobi and shinobi acting as different armies, the 4th Mizukage combined their might. The immense might of their reformed army was divided into 4 legions. The 212th Legion led by Mangetsu Hozuki with his close friend Hakuyuki as his second-in-command. The 99th Legion led by the Umbu commander with Jinpachi acting as second-in-command. The 47th Legion led by Zabuza Momoichi with Aim Yuri acting as his respective second-in-command. And finally, the 501st led by the new Mizukage himself with Kisame Hashigaki acting as his second-in-command. There was a reserve force that would be permanently stationed inside their nation to act in its defense while their 4 legions launched an all-out offensive against their enemies to win the war in their favor. It was risky, but a strategy their new leader seemed confident upon. May stopped herself from thinking further about the war as she was again reminded of how there were nearly a dozen things she wanted to talk about with their new Kage, one of them being a brazen offer proposed by her own father of all. He had joked about it once with her when the man had been swiftly rising through the ranks under the previous Mizukage, but May had never imagined her old man would go ahead with such a proposal before even discussing with her seriously even once. May, he's the last of the Namikaze clan. Even if he rules this nation now, there is no way the people or the nobility, including the ninja clans supporting him, would risk his bloodline going extinct. He has proved himself too powerful a warrior for that, her father, Lord Minace Terumi, had advised. He just lost his wife and child. How could you be so insensitive? She remembered blasting him furiously. If he's smart and adapts to the politics behind running a nation, which I think he will, then he needs the unwavering support of the ninja clans. The clans in turn see the benefit of actually being related to the most powerful ruler this nation has ever seen. Sooner or later, they will all try to offer him their daughters in marriage in order to further advance themselves, explained Lord Minace patiently. Just like you did for the Terumi clan and yourself? She asked bitterly, making the older man sigh as he walked towards her. Yes. I did it for our clan's future, but also for your own, admitted her father, as he gently placed his hands upon her shoulders. Mine? She questioned him with a frown. You're a beautiful and kind woman, my daughter. Under normal circumstances, there would have been an army of suitors waiting for you. But you are a Jinchuriki, and after the events of the Civil War, the people of this village distrust you even more despite the fact that Yugura controlled your actions. I'll protect you for as long as I live, but someday I will be gone, and while I would like to believe that our clan will no doubt look after you as one of their own and their new leader, I just don't want to take any chances with your safety. Also, not many men would be interested in marrying you given the situation you are in except to gain power within our clan or over you, said Lord Minace Terumi patiently. For the first time, May understood her father's actions had been to protect and secure her own future, more than that of their clan or his own alone. It had severely diminished the anger she had felt for him. And you think he won't? She had asked him hesitantly, making him smile. A man who has never lost any battle and one who conquered this nation has no need to resort to such desperate measures. More than me, you know it to be true, Lord Minace had told her gently. May did not want to admit that he was right, but then she also remembered how Naruto had treated her like a normal human being and fellow ninja. For all the times he stood up for, all the times he encouraged her to believe in herself despite the village's rejection, she fondly remembered the day she had helped him with shopping after the death of his wife. It had been one of the best days of her life, as he had proudly walked by her side as a friend and silenced anyone who tried to discourage her presence near him. He had even taken her out for eating afterwards, something which no man had ever done genuinely out of the goodness of their heart. I know you like him, and he is fond of you as well to an extent. It is why I made a marriage proposal to him without informing you first. Besides, you were in the hospital at that time, whispered Lord Mayonnaise with a smile. How do you know he is fond of me? Asked May. Was her father reading too much into something that didn't exist? You nearly killed him during the last battle, May. Even then, he didn't kill you or even cause any permanent injury. He went out of his way to save your life while risking his own gravely. I'm not saying he is in love with you, but he wouldn't go so far if you were not dear to him. The guilt came back to haunt her again, but her father lifted her chin to make her look into his eyes. He personally assured me that he does not hold that against you and knows you were being controlled by Yagura and his men. Don't blame yourself too much. If you hadn't done what you had to, I would be dead. It's I should who be apologizing to you, whispered her father sadly. We're family. He had hugged her affectionately upon hearing those simple yet powerful words that explained everything they both were to each other. Does he really need me by his side, father? He has everything now, she had whispered, as her father gently broke the hug to look straight in her eyes. For a man who has everything, he does not have the most important thing of all, he had whispered sadly. What is that? She had asked curiously. Family. Those words had dispelled her remaining resistance towards this arranged political marriage, even if their clan was yet to receive a formal answer from Naruto himself. She wanted to think that she knew him to an extent and truly cared about him, was even attracted to him. But, if he didn't want her to be a part of his life, then she was prepared to walk away even if it would disappoint her father greatly. She heard the excitement among the crowd grow more and more, with deafening cheering erupting moments later, as she looked up to find the man she had been thinking about walk towards the rooftop of the Hokage Tower. He was wearing a black flak jacket matched by pants and boots of similar color. On top of that, he wore a stark white hawari with the word fourth etched in deep red across his back. Lastly, he had a traditional Kirigakure headband wrapped around his right arm with the four symbols across it made of actual gold instead of bronze. It was simple, yet an attire that also made him look more appealing apart from his natural handsome face. May saw many women and even few men were blushing, while the rest of the majority were simply happy. She clearly saw their hopes for the new Kage in their wide smiles and respectful gazes, a feeling which she herself felt as she looked at the same man which made her smile as well. Mizukage's tower. As he walked towards the edge of the rooftop, Naruto Namikaze was left speechless by the sheer amount of people that had arrived from all over the country to watch his coronation. He knew his recent reforms had made him immensely popular among the people, but this was just. He was at a loss of words, yet he didn't waver in his steps and confidently kept marching forward as the roaring and cheering started increasing even more and more, and as he reached the edge, the people's roar of approval nearly echoed across entire Kirigakure. This was probably the greatest moment of his life, with the love and respect of an entire nation staring at him through its overjoyed people. An acknowledgement even his own motherland had not given him. But the people he wanted to be present the most in this moment were not here. His eyes futilely searching for phantom ghosts of his adoptive father and mother, Tobirama, Nagato, his Spartan comrades, and most of all Ino. His eyes widened for a second when in a fleeting moment he saw a blonde woman similar looking to his wife be present in the crowd below, only to quickly realize it was someone else, and he was just seeing things. A deep sadness arose in his heart which he suppressed when he watched many familiar faces in the crowd. The 7 ninja swordsmen, the Umbu commander, even Kushina his oldest friend standing nearby to Mei Terumi. Their presence somewhat healed the hole in his heart, and made him steel himself once again to raise his right hand in acknowledgement towards the sea of people whose cheers made him smile once again. October 10th, 20 years after the 5 great nations' creation, the 4th Mizukage was born, and the world was never the same again. Chapter 38 Schism. Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi alongside his advisors and few clan heads watched the video recording sent by the Mizukage on the astral projector. It was the pinnacle of Yuza's success, the likes even Konoha couldn't even dream to achieve. The recording had been sent by one of Yuza's deep cover operatives within their new revolutionized ally nation. He glanced to his side to look at his mentor, Tobirama Senju. He saw the man briefly smile when he watched his only son appear in front of a deeply enchanted crowd whose roars nearly deafened the entire world. The 4th Mizukage. While the coronation ceremony was nothing out of the ordinary, the sheer presence of so many people from each of the Land of Water's territories marked the beginning of a revolution that had shaken the foundation of the ninja world. A shinobi had seized a great nation under his rule. The feudal lords are calling him a tyrant. If not for our current war situation, I am very sure our own would also publicly denounce him like the others have already done, commented Kohara seriously. They were all surprised when Tobirama chuckled a bit, drawing everyone's attention to him. Does that look like a tyrant to you? No tyrant ever gave back so much, countered the Senju clan head without hesitation. Hiruzen and the others would have argued, but they had all heard of the swift reforms the new Mizukage had brought to his nation. In a matter of a few weeks, he had literally changed the destiny of his nation, and the people loved him for it, evident from the sheer amount of presents and cheering they saw right before their eyes. "I don't think any Kage ever received such reception upon his coronation," whispered one of the other clan heads. "That's no Kage, my lord," replied Lord Shin Nara cryptically. "Lord Nara? That's a conqueror." "A king in the truest sense," answered the Nara leader. Despite not being on his side, Tobirama felt immense pride from the bottom of his heart for what his son had achieved despite all that he went through in his miserable life. If he had been born in Kirigakure, Tobirama himself would have volunteered to follow the man before him. There was something truly special about the boy, a feeling he had only experienced for his deceased older brother who had ruled over the shinobi world. Now another Senju had taken up that mantle. Tobirama is a good leader, but Naruto will be simply great. He remembered Mito's parting words to his son before he left their village, and the visual before him was proof of the woman's words coming true. Did he really defeat two Biju and an army that outnumbered his paltry force many times over? Asked Danzo skeptically. All the reports we received from all our sources point that way. Does he ever lose any battle at all? Questioned Hamura in disbelief. Tobirama understood his former students' feelings. As far as they knew, the new Mizukage had never lost a single battle at all. His series of victories beginning with his conquest of Osaka, which led to Tobirama's freedom from Kumogakure's captivity. It then went on to an even more impossible victory when he went deep behind enemy lines and eliminated the Lightning Daimyo, starting a war of succession that was only recently solved, leading to great instability. The successful assault of Nagi Island, forming a peace treaty with the Land of Fire, and now winning a civil war. If those feats weren't impressive enough, he remembered Operation Thunderbolt, and all the other missions he had successfully completed either as an Yuzu Spartan captain or acting as a Kiri Umbu operative. Each victory though came at a heavy price, leaving the boy alone in the end without any family or friends. However, it was a cost only Tobirama and a selected few individuals knew the boy had paid. But for the rest of the people of the world who didn't know the full story of Naruto Namikaze, there could only be one possible assumption due to their limited knowledge. His son was a conqueror not just of the battlefield, but also of the hearts and minds of people. If the unstoppable cheering he was witnessing was anything to go by, a shinobi king. "What does this mean for us?" asked another clan head. Tobirama peeked a glance at Mito, who gave him a nod as he turned his gaze back towards Hiruzen and the rest of the people in the room. "Only that we were lucky to form an alliance with him, and we should keep it that way if we are to win this war," advised Tobirama. "Then we should turn this conqueror and his undefeated army's might upon our enemies, starting with Kumogakure." "Gods know we need the help," proposed Lady Mito. "I agree. For now, he might just be the answer to the foes that threaten to destroy us. I'll make sure our men are ready when he makes his next move. In the meantime, I'll send a congratulatory message from our end alongside a few gifts to honor his ascension," decided Hiruzen. "Wise choice," Lord Hokage agreed. Lord Shinara. None of the others present in the room raised any objection to that, bringing an end to their emergency meeting, yet Tobirama's gaze found itself glancing back at the video recording. He didn't know what the future held for them, but for now, your mother would be proud. As am I. Kirigakure. General Abe was being marched through the halls of the Kage Tower by a squad of Umbu Black Ops. He could not help but rethink about the events since his defeat as he was led towards the new ruler of their nation. Thousands of his men had died during the capital's fall, but the moment he surrendered, all those who followed suit were spared and instead taken prisoners. Even when Mangetsu Hozuki learned of his father's tragic demise, Commander Saji of the Kemo Brigade and the other 7 ninja swordsmen had prevented the grieving boy from extracting any unwanted vengeance upon their prisoners, citing their general's orders to them. Ever since then he had heard great tales from his prison guards about the sheer amount of changes their new ruler had undertaken since his rise to power. Most of it for the good of the people and the nation instead of feudal nobility. It had greatly increased the respect Abe felt towards the young man, even if he was the one keeping him and his family hostage. He saw 2 Umbu standing guard outside a door and realized the decisive moment had arrived. Once he was led inside, he finally came face to face with the man whose tales had spread to each and every corner of their nation. Perhaps even the world. General Abe offered a respectful salute to the 4th Mizukage, prompting the young man to get up from his seat in a respectful acknowledgement of that gesture. He then gestured for the Imperial general to take a seat, followed by signaling the Umbu to leave the room. Once they were gone, he took his own seat and looked at the older man. "Please forgive me for not being able to offer you congratulations on your victory," said Abe truthfully, for doing so would only highlight his own failure to protect his feudal lord even more. The new Mizukage displayed maturity beyond his young age by waving off that apology. "You did your job, General. I can respect that, as did I, although I wish this conflict had never happened in the first place, answered Naruto honestly. This conflict brought you here, Lord Fourth, pointed General Abe. Was the man playing him by denouncing the civil war that led to his very ascension? I did not wish for it or start it, but that does not change that many people of our nation died in it, including innocents, a price that is heavy for me to accept nonetheless. Do you know why you are here? Asked Naruto, earning a nod from the older man. You want me to lead a suicide force to Osaka in order to draw the military power of Kumogakure away from their dear village and feudal capital where you plan to launch your real attack. Your advisors told me about it as they brought me here. Naruto nodded, which made the man in front of him continue. Ruthless but a practical strategy. You want to get rid of all those who fought against you in the civil war without staining your own hands and be called a butcher. Our families held hostage and threatened if we do not follow this order, pointed General Abe harshly. It's the only way to save your lives and those of your families. General Abe was surprised upon hearing those words and watched the Mizukage sigh as he got up from his seat to glance back at the village from the window of his office. Your side also committed grave atrocities upon the people of this village and our Kage. There are many who have not forgotten that. I am in a position now that I could execute you all, and the people wouldn't bat an eye since you were the ones protecting a regime that kept them impoverished and suffering, explained Naruto. And yours is any different? Countered the general, earning a determined and icy stare. It is. Abe backed down since he knew it to be true even if he didn't want to accept it, since that only showed he had supported a ruler who had never truly cared about the people of this nation. But unlike the daimyo and the rebels, I am not a butcher. Throwing your defeated forces into prison and taking your families hostage was the only way for me to prevent my followers from inflicting horrible massacres upon your faction. Even now many ask me for your heads, and the only thing stopping them is the fact that I convinced them about this plan of action. They think this punishment is worse than death, explained Naruto frankly. And it isn't? Asked General Abe curiously. I am well aware that many will die in this diversion, but that can't be avoided. The only thing I can offer in return for those deaths is a full pardon and burials with full honors, as well as the promise that their families will be taken care of, pledged Naruto seriously. General Abe was quite surprised by the genuine terms being proposed, considering his faction had completely lost and was at the mercy of this man. Why do you want me to lead? Asked the general. Because you are the only one who can actually save this army and keep the casualties to a minimum. All those who survive this battle and are ready to pledge their loyalty to the new regime shall be pardoned and accepted back amongst the armed forces, even if many don't like it, promised Naruto. I don't understand. Why go so far for us, the losing side? Questioned the general seriously. How can I conquer other nations if I cannot even win the loyalty of all my countrymen? Besides, extending a hand to the losing side in order to completely unite one's nation is the duty of any competent ruler. General Abe's eyes widened upon hearing those words from the Mizukage himself. Even after everything that had happened, even if they were on opposite sides, the man still considered him and the other rebels as citizens of this nation. He was willing to put aside the cries for vengeance for the sake of their nation's future. He doubted the former daimyo, Yugura, or he himself would make the same choice had they been victorious in their struggle. Or maybe that was exactly why they had lost in the first place, as they had fought for maintaining the current status quo, their own powers and those of the nobility. While Genjutsu and his successor were fighting for the people and the right future of their nation, his decision was made. Naruto watched the general get up from his seat and walk towards him. He looked into the man's eyes for a long moment before the general knelt in front of him respectfully. I shall follow you, Lord Fourth. With people like you by my side, I might just conquer this world, he replied with a smile, as he offered his hand to his new ally, who accepted it respectfully. Dungeons. Kushina watched the prison guards quickly offer respectful bows as their new Kage walked past them with her following behind him. Together, they marched towards a particular cell where a former enemy was held. In the past few weeks, this man had lost everything and was a shell of his former self. He was overthrown from power, his entire clan executed right before his eyes, and now, he would truly cease to exist even if he remained alive for however long in this world. Kushina would have hesitated from doing what she was about to had the same man not tried to kill her oldest friend, tortured the previous Mizukage to death, and terrorized the people. As Naruto opened the cell's door, she came face to face with Yagura Karatachi, or what was left of him. Upon realizing just who had arrived to meet him, he tried to break free, but the dozens upon dozens of chakra chains she herself had created kept him restrained and drained what little chakra that was already not taken from him. The man was not tortured despite him having done the same to his predecessor, but she could see he had stopped eating properly after witnessing his clan's execution, something that had scarred him for life if the madness in his eyes was any indication. Here to gloat, my fellow traitor? spat Yugura with hatred clearly present in his bitter tone. It's time, answered Naruto simply. If only the fools who follow you can realize your real truth. That you are an even bigger traitor than they think I am, Spy accused Yugura. I am not here to discuss right or wrong with you. There was a time when I used to think of such things. Now I only believe in having the power to accomplish my dreams. To not follow people that I hate, refuted Naruto without hesitation. He gestured to his friend who walked forward but was stopped when Yugura looked straight at him. Why did you eliminate only my clan and not the others? Asked Yugura honestly. It was the least bloody option. The other clans are bigger and more stronger than yours, something which I can use in the war effort. You, on the other hand, were the face of the rebellion. Punishing you is necessary. My supporters wanted to crucify someone. I chose you, and your family became. You were the most visible and least bloody option. That's all, replied Naruto frankly. You really are a heartless bastard, whispered Yugura venomously. You lost the right to judge me the moment you tortured our predecessor to death. I defeated you in battle, and as the loser, this is your fate. Yugura Karatachi, for your crimes against Kirigakure, I sentence you to a life of slavery. Enjoy your new prison, declared Naruto without hesitation or mercy. Kushina quickly performed a set of hand seals before slamming her right hand over the struggling former Mizukage's head, making a set of kanjis flow across his entire body. In a few moments, the man slumped over only to rise up again a few minutes later, only this time his eyes were blood red in color. What? Asked a gruff voice, which certainly did not belong to the soft-spoken Karatachi clan head. Hello, Three Tails, called Naruto respectfully. It's you. What is the meaning of summoning me like this? Asked the Biju, now completely conscious in the body of his host. We loosened the seal controlling you, enough for you to seize control of this body without completely breaking free while trapping your Jinchuriki's conscious in his own mind, answered Naruto, making the Biju glance at Kushina, who stared at him unflinchingly. You Uzumaki are really something. But again, why? Questioned the beast. I promise to improve your situation. This is the first step, said Naruto seriously. I'm listening. For now, I am willing to give you limited control of this body. Help me defeat my enemies in this war and I shall set you free, offered Naruto. Just like that? Asked the tailed beast skeptically. You'll be free to live wherever you want as long as you answer my nation's call whenever required. To defend my people whenever your powers are required. Do that and you won't ever have to be confined to Jinchurikis again, promised Naruto. So from a slave to a mercenary? That's some improvement, said the beast mockingly with a laugh. It was quite surprised when there was no outward reaction by Naruto, who simply stared right into his eyes despite the mockery. Do I have your word that I'll be set free of this body if I help you win your war? Asked the Three Tails seriously. Yes, answered Naruto honestly. Then I shall help you defeat your enemies. With this body, maybe I cannot do as much destruction, but my attacks will be more precise and deadly. Yugura never really stood a chance against someone like you, whispered the Three Tails with a chuckle. You'll learn about your target soon enough and will be shipped out soon under General Abe and his army. I don't need to say that you need to pretend as if Yugura is still in charge for your allies to not panic and do something foolish, cautioned Naruto. What makes you think I won't just kill them all and switch sides? Threatened the Biju. He saw the boy's natural blue eyes turn red in an instant, followed by a monstrous killing intent now being rained down upon him. The fourth Mizukage walked back into the cell until he was staring right into the Biju's eyes. You are free to try. And I promise to hunt you down to the end of this world and beyond. Your end will be something every Biju will remember and fear. Or work with me and I'll help improve the condition of your brethren, proposed Naruto icily. The Biju looked at him for several long moments before giving a single nod. Wordlessly, the fourth Mizukage walked out of the cell with an ice-cold but satisfied smile present on his lips. Is this truly a good idea? Asked Kushina, as she followed after him. It's a gamble. In case the beast tries to betray us, then I have already marked his host's body. I'll teleport wherever he runs off to and deal with him personally, reassured Naruto confidently. I don't understand. Why? She asked curiously. Let's just say it's an insurance, answered her old friend cryptically. Insurance? Against someone whom I don't trust completely. Kushina didn't understand his reasoning despite the explanation, but chose not to pursue her questions further. Now that we have the beast's cooperation, use it to gather its chakra that our dear Mizukage had requested to make his secret superweapon. Can't have him thinking that we are no longer loyal to him, or that the curse mark on you is undone, suggested Naruto seriously. I understand. There is something that I have wanted to ask you, whispered Kushina hesitantly, making her friend look at her curiously. Will you attack Yuzu for what was done to us and the Spartans? She asked honestly. I would like to avoid that. No matter what happened, it's still our motherland. I'll be content to let it retain its autonomy if the Mizukage confesses his crimes and resigns after restoring the honor of our comrades. They will however join the great nation I shall build. Should they refuse, then I will bring them to their knees just as I must for the other nations, explained Naruto without hesitation. Then I hope the Mizukage sees reason, prayed Kushina hopefully. Naruto chose not to comment on his friend's optimism. Knowing the old man and his desire to cling to power even after so many years, it didn't look as if he would give them an easy way to resolve this. But he would cross that bridge at the right moment. As night settled in, he found himself resting atop one of the mountains surrounding the Mist Village. Looking down, he saw all the lights across the different sectors and the vast forest that surrounded its outskirts. Glancing even further, he saw even more swaths of land, all of it belonging to him. It was still surreal to accept that he was now the uncontested ruler of an entire nation, and just a Kage of a military village, the fourth Mizukage. I wonder what you would think of me now, mother? He whispered out loud. Even after all these years, her loss haunted him. She had died protecting her son, whom she wished would grow up to be a fine Uzushiogakyu shinobi. Instead, he joined the Black Ops, then became a spy, and now the ruler of a completely different nation. A part of him knew it was pointless to think about what she would think when Inoue Namikaze had been dead for years. Maybe it was just another way for him to remember her. He didn't know what she would think of his actions and journey, but he had wanted her here. Lord Forth. He blinked in surprise when he saw May climb up one of the slopes leading towards the cliff he was currently sitting over. Had he been so lost in his thoughts that he hadn't even sensed her presence? Her presence also reminded him of the marriage proposal made by the girl's father, and it made him hesitate. He liked the girl, but his heart belonged to another, even if she was dead. Kushina understood that fact despite her own feelings for him, their relationship being complicated to say the least. But May, I'm sorry for intruding, she apologized sincerely. You wouldn't have if you didn't think what you wanted to discuss was not important. Still, you climbed up an awful lot of distance to reach me, he commented with a chuckle while glancing at the high mountain the poor girl must have climbed, whereas he had simply teleported here via one of his marks upon the hilltop. She nodded and took a seat as he allowed her the next couple of minutes to catch her breath before looking at her expectantly. I heard about what my father did, she said at last, albeit hesitantly. May, he began, but she raised a hand making him pause. I want you to know that I can talk him out of it, she proposed resolutely. He continued listening to her, and understood the meaning behind her words quite clearly. And I'm sorry I couldn't congratulate you earlier for becoming Mizukage, said May apologetically, which made him smile and wave off her apology since he had already received countless such congratulations already. It's nothing. And I'm also sorry for hurting you and raising arms against you, she whispered sadly. Is that why you are offering to talk your father out of the marriage proposal as a form of apology, or because I am just not good enough? He asked jovially, making her eyes widen in horror. Nothing like that. She was about to clarify, until his pleasant smile made her stop. We're friends. What kind of man would I be if I abandoned you when you needed me most? Besides, you did what you had to protect your family. It was just an unfortunate situation, but we are past that now, he reassured her. Her eyes became moist when she looked at the faint white hair among his blonde ones, a result of that devastating battle. She had heard whispers among the doctors that he had lost quite a few years of his life exerting himself beyond humanely possible. And yet he didn't blame her for putting him in that position. How could someone be so selfless? I know what the clans want from me. As the last of the Namikaze clan, they want me to marry once again and have more children so my line doesn't go extinct. The reason why I haven't given an answer to your father is not because I don't like you or see the sound reasoning behind the village requesting something like this from me, but I couldn't protect my wife and unborn child. I can't just forget that or forgive myself for not being there when they needed me most. Doing that again to someone else is not something I wish for. Besides, something that is supposed to die and doesn't will eventually fade away. Be they clan, system, or nations. Maybe it's my clan destiny to fade away with me, he explained patiently. May understood quite a lot from his answers, but it only increased her respect for him. Many would call him too fearful for not choosing to marry once again, but most of such people saw Kage, or the last heir of a clan, on the brink of extinction. They couldn't or most probably didn't want to see the person who had suffered a great tragedy in his life and was impacted because of that quite deeply. Besides, we are at war. As Mizukage, I'll be leading my armies into battle against our enemies. That definitely raises some serious questions about a happy future. Even if I am to ignore all of that and marry, my wife will be required to bear children very soon given the state of the world due to the ongoing war. They won't just be responsible for helping rebuild my clan but also keep this nation together while I am at war. Should I fall in battle, unfortunately, another power struggle will start, and while I would like to trust our people, there will always be a few who would want to completely disband the old power structure just like I had to with Yagura. I am prepared to die but can't watch my future family be killed in a power struggle should I fall. Is that something you want for yourself? Mei was taken aback a little by the harsh possibilities he had presented but also grateful that he was actually thinking about the challenges and dangers his possible spouse would be facing. Most men in his position would have simply done what his supporters were asking without giving such deep thought on the consequences, but she had also thought about the same over the past few weeks. When you put it like that, there is no one else but me who can bear that responsibility, she replied confidently, and didn't miss the surprise on his face. Most women would have ran off, but she hadn't. Explain. I am the heiress of one of the noble ninja clans of this nation. As such, I am well versed with the politics and the factions involved in it. You have a favorable opinion of me despite my Jinchuriki status and are a dear friend, something I'm not sure the next ruler will be if something happens to you. More than that, you are currently the only shinobi in this village who can handle the beast inside of me. My seal will weaken during pregnancy, and I know you can keep the beast under control with your power during that critical stage. I am more than capable enough of crushing anyone that dares to harm me. If our last battle was any indication, she pointed with a smirk. To say he was impressed would be quite an understatement. There really was a sharp mind behind that beauty of this woman. This marriage is as much to secure my own future, and that of my family. Most importantly, you are one of the few who treated me like a real person and not a pariah. You stood up for me, encouraged me and protected me even when you suffered for it. You promised me a better future, and I see that you are delivering it step by step. I consider you a dear friend and would like us to be more. If you want it, proposed Mei with a gentle smile, a faint blush creeping up on her cheeks. Naruto contemplated her explanation and honestly couldn't come up with a better way forward. The village wouldn't leave him alone on this topic anytime soon, and did he really have the right to end his clan's history? His mother had went through great struggle to give him a future, had wanted him to carry the Namikaze name forward with pride. But what would doing this mean for his future? What answer he would be able to give Ino if he was able to bring her back to life with Madara's help? Would he still be able to have a life with her if he married someone else? Would she take this as a betrayal of their relationship? I need some time to think about this, Mei, he answered at last. While not the answer she was hoping for, she understood his need to contemplate this course of action. She trusted his judgment, and knew he would do what was best for both of them. I want you to join me in the next campaign. I won't be able to take Kumogakure and their feudal capital without your help. If we achieve victory together, the dissident voices in the village will have no choice but to accept this marriage despite you being a Jinchuriki. It will also allow me to decide for myself, and give you the same opportunity. What do you think? He asked her seriously. It's a good idea, she agreed readily. They settled into a peaceful silence, and after a few moments, he offered her his hand, which made her smile even more as she joined hers with his and realized how warm it was. It's quite a view, she whispered happily. It is, agreed Naruto, as he watched the moonlight shine upon their village. I'm proud of you, Naruto. He smiled briefly, wondering if she would feel the same way if she came to know his real truth. But that was a question he would prefer remained unanswered, so he settled for a simple one instead. Thank you. Chapter 39. Battle of the Raging Seas. Battle of the Raging Seas. Madara watched an astral projection of a fleet of ships sailing forth from the shores of the Land of Water. Unlike any other voyage, their sailing speed was unbelievable thanks to the fourth Mizukage standing at the head of this navy, and making the very ocean drive his rapid advance thanks to his mastery over water style. Something his shinobi could only dream to achieve. A 14,000-strong army with another 2,000 acting as its logistical and medical support, 4 legions made up of 4,000 personnel each. It was the strongest army ever mustered by Kirigakure that had set off for a lengthy and brutal world war in such a grand fashion. If it fell, then so would their nation, as the reserve force left behind by their Kage would not be able to protect its lands against a full-blown counter-invasion launched by its enemies should their main armies be destroyed or routed. He's going all in, commented Zetsu disappointedly. This was all he could muster, considering he sent off 7,000 of his men to Osaka to act as a diversion. Even so, Kumogakure still has more men than him. Did the Raikage take the bait? Asked the Uchiha. Not completely. He has pulled his son alongside his regiment, and the Kinkaku Black Ops from the front lines near Konoha's borders, even ceding critical territory they had won, for he realized how grave this threat is. It has freed critical war resources for the Land of Fire to launch a counter-invasion against the Land of Wind now that the strongest military in the world is off their back, answered Zetsu seriously. Just as Naruto planned, A's forces and the Kinkaku are nearly 10,000 strong. The diversionary force led by General Abe is only 7,000 strong. They'll most probably be cut to pieces or be broken into desperate fighting groups, warned the creature. Not our concern. Even the bait knows its fate. What about Kumogakure and its feudal capital's defenses? Asked Madara seriously. The third Raikage controls his village with a 10,000-strong force. The new puppet daimyo you installed forced him to part with another 5,000 of his reserves to join the royal army in the capital's defenses. That's nearly 25,000 men guarding the two locations in total against Naruto's army of 16,000. I'm not sure how he can win this despite his military brilliance. The odds are simply too great, said Zetsu frankly. Just as the Raikage, the boy himself is capable of facing an entire army given how strong he has become. But you're right, he's severely outnumbered. One mistake on his part, and it can end in disaster. It's where we come in, advised Madara seriously. If not for their stubborn ideology and short-sightedness, Madara would have chosen the land of lightning to create his new world. But the fools would never understand the greater picture, which was why they had to be broken. Why do you like him so much, Madara? Asked Zetsu curiously, making the Uchiha glance at the young Kage leading his fleet. He reminds me of myself from long ago, also like Hashirama to an extent. Unlike the armchair Kages of today who prefer to command their armies from the safety of the rear or secure command zones, he's always out there in the field. Right beside his men, leading through example. Sharing every hardship and pain he asks his troops to endure. His predecessors lacked this zeal, commented Madara with a smile. Some would call it foolish. If the Kage falls in battle, an entire nation gets put in jeopardy, even causing his armies to collapse, countered Zetsu. True. Most Kages think along those strategic lines. But from his birth, he was taught to lead from the front, even if it means facing death every time. For people like him, there is only victory or death, answered Madara. Zetsu sighed but didn't push any further as he completed a set of hand seals, making dozens upon dozens of coffins arise in the vast underground center they were situated in. He looked at the warriors that had been summoned once again from the afterlife. The Spartans, while very young in nature, they had fought an unsung battle that Kumogakure remembered till this day, even if they never talked about it. These children had paid the ultimate price for their nation's future only to be thrown aside by the very same system they died to protect. It was fitting and personal for them to take part in the war to bring down the nation they died fighting against. One of them stepped forward and now looked at him before his eyes shifted towards the astral projection upon which he saw his brother leading an entire navy. That's the fourth Mizukage and his army marching to destroy the land of lightning completely, said Madara simply, making the young redhead's eyes widen in shock before a proud and immensely satisfied smile arrived upon his face. Mizukage, huh? Elder brother truly is something else, whispered Nagato happily. Madara tried to control the brief pain that emerged in his heart upon seeing the love the boy had for his older brother, even if they were half-siblings. It reminded him of his own brothers and especially Izuna, whom he lost to this cruel world. Soon, brother. I shall create a true world where you can live again, peace. In that way, both him and Naruto were alike. They both wanted to destroy the current corrupt system and bring peace in order to let humanity and their lost families regain eternal happiness. It was why he could not allow the boy to be defeated by someone else's brilliance or his own mistake, no matter the cost. He explained everything that had happened since the Namikaze brothers had last met each other, including the fact that Naruto had now joined their quest to usher in a new dawn for humanity. I never wanted him to experience such pain. He has endured enough of that his entire life, whispered Nagato sadly, as Madara informed him of the demise of Ino Yamanaka and the child of his elder brother. Will you still fight? You could end up in a fate worse than death, asked Madara seriously, and was pleased to see the sheer rage in the redhead's eyes. I will, promised Nagato fearlessly. And your men? I haven't given their conscience free rein like yours. Will they willingly fight this war? Questioned Zetsu skeptically. Nagato looked at the creature, making Madara give a nod. Soon enough, Zetsu stopped the absolute control he had held over the other Spartans. They had been conscious for everything that had happened so far, just not free to speak their own thoughts until now. The redhead Spartan watched as his old comrades and fellow Spartan leaders Hayate and Kasumi stepped forward after exchanging silent looks with the rest of their comrades. Ready to destroy the lightning bitches? Challenged Nagato. Both Spartan leaders looked at him for a moment before glancing at their former captain, now Mizukage, and their fellow comrade Kushina standing side by side on the astral projection. Kasumi merely gave a smirk as hate echoed the feeling in every Spartan's hearts. Are you kidding? We're right behind you. Madara watched Nagato smile and clasped each of his hands with his old comrades as the rest of the Spartans came forward to voice their own consent to get the justice they didn't receive in life. Their camaraderie clear for anyone to see, which made him smile. He was one step closer towards his true dream. Naruto had a heavy frown upon his face as he watched the unending thunder that had raged across the skies for the past several hours. Heavy rains had battered them mercilessly, and the violent seas would have already consumed a few ships already if not for his and the 7 ninja swordsmen's best efforts to control the water around their naval vessels. He remembered several regiments of civilian fighters sent by the daimyo to rescue the previous 7 ninja swordsmen had never reached Iwagakure, and had instead perished in this very sea. Judging by how violent it was becoming with each passing moment, he could understand why. If his shinobi were struggling to keep themselves from sinking, then civilian fighters never stood a chance against such dangerous waters. Lord Fourth. Look at that. He gazed far on the eastern flank and found a wave of mist approaching towards them spanning across several dozen kilometers. They were still 1,000 miles away from the shores of the Land of Lightning, and no natural mist could occur under such a violent storm. Kaori, link up with the sensor division. I want to report on any enemy presence on the eastern flank, he ordered, referring his childhood friend by her new code name they had decided themselves. Kushina nodded and bravely jumped off his flagship to land upon a nearby vessel and hop on to the next ones as a few highly skilled sensors joined her in running towards their farthest ships on the eastern flank. She's good. Even for a mercenary, commented Mei with faint admiration. It's what we pay her for, replied Naruto, as he glanced at the female Jinchuriki and possibly his future wife who had volunteered to accompany him in this conquest. Her reasoning for staying by his side was the fact that she wanted their men to witness her loyally fight for their Kage in order to gain support for her own political elevation in the future. Besides, if her Biju went out of control, then the 4th Mizukage was the only one strong enough to control it. Not that she needed to, as the beast had been quite curious upon getting a brief signal from the 3 tails, a simple message to comply with the new Kage's war for the time being. Mei was drenched completely, as were every one of her comrades. The weather was cold, the rains merciless, and the seas violent. She saw the worry in their Kage's eyes, which made her take a step closer. What is it? She asked him. Something feels off. I can feel it, he whispered, only loud enough for her to hear. There was no need to make the men panic, considering they were already fighting nature itself. As if his words had been prophetic, they saw a red flare immediately being fired up from a ship on the eastern flank, the one where Kushina and few of the censors had gone to. Before Mei could turn back and ask another question as to what the woman could have found, Naruto had already vanished from their ship. He was quite fast. The 4th Mizukage appeared on the ship, earning firm salutes from every ninja and civilian on board except for Kushina, who stayed true to her persona of a mercenary. Report, ordered Naruto. There is a disturbing energy in the mist, Lord Fourth. It's not natural, answered Kushina seriously, earning firm nods from the other censors in her unit. I knew it, thought Naruto frustratedly. With winter approaching, the sea shouldn't have been this violent. He would know, and as would Kushina, since as Spartans they were trained to fight on land, air and sea. And while they had not fought any major naval battles or skirmishes in their service, they had performed combat patrols and training operations in this ocean. The mist was rapidly approaching towards his fleet, and once it settled in, his fleet could very well be torn to shreds with each ship fighting for itself in these violent seas. Can you erect a protective barrier around our fleet? Asked Naruto seriously. Not if they follow such a large formation. Reorganize the ships into a spindle formation in tight-knit groups. That should be enough for me to form a passable barrier. We'll still need to keep the ships together as much as possible, she advised him, earning an understanding nod in return. Get back to the flagship and adopt a spindle formation. Use your chakra chains to link up every ship, he ordered. That'll drain my chakra reserves very rapidly, she warned him. Have the ninjas share their chakra with you. Those are my orders, he commanded, gesturing to one of the censor ninja to ensure the men aboard the flagship didn't raise any hurdles in supporting the mercenary. As Kushina went off to carry out her orders, Naruto turned towards one of the other censors swiftly. Summon the 7 ninja swordsmen. The shinobi saluted before vanishing with a quick shunshin as the last Namikaze glared at the approaching mist. With such a turbulent ocean and violent weather, his own sensory powers found it difficult to understand what exactly was going on, and why he felt very uneasy deep in his heart. He watched as his fleet started adopting a spindle formation slowly as a series of chakra chains spread from the flagship and latched onto each and every vessel in a few minutes. By that time, the 7 ninja swordsmen had arrived at his side and looked at him for further orders. What is that? Asked Kisame with a frown, before his Kage could even say a word. At first none of his comrades saw anything amongst the raging seas, prompting the Mizukage to activate his red eyes fully, and what he saw made his heart stop. Kaori, bring up the barrier now! He roared fiercely and used chakra to make his voice echo across the entire fleet despite the raging storm thundering over them all. But it was already a little too late. Mangetsu blanched when he clearly saw a land mass full of spikes emerge from the deep ocean and instantly launch an entire barrage of those deadly spikes clearly through the skies, which were now heading straight for their clustered fleet. "With me!" commanded Naruto swiftly, thankful to have his aerial gear always strapped across his back. A practice drilled into him brutally from his Spartan days. He had instilled the same discipline in his men in return. To their credit, not one of the 7 ninja swordsmen hesitated or flinched in fear as a literal rain of spikes sailed towards their fleet. Instead of seeking cover, they took to the skies and headed straight towards the hail of projectiles under the lead of their fearless Kage. "Haku, Mangetsu, Zabuza, Jinpachi, protect the fleet. Buy time for Kaori to set up the barrier," commanded Naruto fearlessly. The 3 swordsmen nodded fiercely before dispersing into 3 different sections to protect the front, center, and rear of their fleet respectively. "Amuri, Kisame! Follow my lead." The remaining swordsmen unleashed their holy swords and followed after the Mizukage as he raced towards the newly discovered foe. The Kiri army watched from their ships as 3 of the 7 ninja swordsmen took up defensive positions around the front, center, and rear of their fleet. Haku quickly performed a set of hand seals before forming nearly hundreds of ice mirrors across the entire eastern flank in a defensive wall. It came into existence just in time for the first of the humongous spikes to come crashing down upon the fleet. The Yuki clan heir roared a fearsome war cry, pouring massive amount of chakra to her defense. Ice mirrors after ice mirrors were shattered under the fearsome rain of monstrous spikes, only to be reinforced by hundreds more as Haku valiantly led the defense of their entire fleet single-handedly. But even a novice could see the sheer amount of strain it was putting upon the young heiress, and she was only relieved when Jinpachi joined the fray. He brought forth his deadly blade shibuki and unleashed a volley of explosive tags that tore apart a good part of the spike ring. Relentlessly, he continued his attack as Haku fought desperately to protect him and the ice mirror's shield that was protecting their fleet. Mangetsu and Zabuza joined next with fearless war cries of their own as they created dozens of water dragons from the raging ocean. The beasts' demonic eyes gleamed in the fiery storm as they launched a deadly volley of water missiles that joined their comrades' simultaneous attacks in crushing the deadly spikes. But even as they fought valiantly and prevented even one projectile from reaching any of their ships, they knew it was only a matter of time and a single slip to deal a devastating blow. The loss of a single ship meant losing hundreds of men, and that was something they couldn't afford even before they reached their enemies' shores. It was why they were quite surprised when a shockwave raced forward and obliterated the next volley of spikes about to rain down on them. Looking back, Mangetsu saw Materumi joining the battle with 5 tails clearly swirling from her back. As the Jinchuriki charged bravely to the aid of the 7 ninja swordsmen, she was quite surprised when ferocious cheer erupted from one of the ships as she passed by them to join the front line. Soon enough, more and more ships joined in until it turned into an unending roar. Words couldn't describe the content and pride she felt in her heart, as this was the first time her fellow countrymen were openly cheering for her when her entire life she had only been looked upon as a monster. It made her charge forward to join the front line and launch more deadly air shockwaves that immensely helped their fledgling defense, as the silhouettes of a deep red-colored barrier started emerging in all directions of their fleet, with Kaori having gotten crucial time to bring up her own defense, which made her be grateful for Naruto's insight of hiring this Uzumaki mercenary. "We hold for the barrier," she commanded loudly. The 4-7 ninja swordsmen nodded as together they intensified their counterattack against the enemy's offense. Naruto sailed through the skies to now what he could clearly see was a floating mass of spikes, larger than even every known tailed beast in size. "What the fuck is that?" cursed Amuri. "I didn't think it would be true." There were rumors that Kumogakure had an island which they used for their Jinchuriki and special Black Ops training. "But this thing is not an island but a fucking massive ninja turtle," exclaimed Kisame in awe. "It dies." Both swordsmen agreed with their Kage's command, considering the sheer amount of spikes the now identified enemy turtle was launching from its back and straight towards the Kiri fleet. Their comrades fighting a losing battle against time to save their vessels against the deadly onslaught. Twin-pronged attack. Amuri and I will strike its upper body. Kisame, go and scout for a weakness on its lower half submerged in the water, commanded the 4th Mizukage. The shark-like swordsman nodded before diving fearlessly into the ocean, all the while performing a unique set of hand signs. Summoning jutsu. In the blink of an eye, Kisame was joined by an entire squadron of hunter sharks as they all now joined forces in accomplishing the Mizukage's command. "Lord 4th, the mist!" warned Amuri in alarm. Naruto saw the mist circling around the island turtle was now rapidly approaching towards him and Amuri, which made him execute a counterattack instantly. Wind style. Gale palm. Channeling a substantial amount of chakra into the attack, he unleashed a powerful air wave that dispersed the approaching wall of mist into smaller fragments into multiple directions. Amiri used that opening to charge forth, raising her twin blades Kiba straight towards the skies that rumbled with storms of lightning now gathering over the monstrous island turtle. "Thunder God!" yelled Amiri furiously. Naruto was frankly amazed as the holy swords launched a powerful wave of lightning directly into the skies, which crashed against the storming clouds. In the blink of an eye, a humongous lightning spear crashed from the skies as if unleashed by the gods themselves. Mercilessly it struck the island turtle's back, creating a monstrous explosion and temporarily halting the spears it was launching from its back, as hundreds of them were simply blown away in the blast. However, it didn't stop the beast's advance towards their fleet. In retrospect, it only made the turtle pick up his pace, if such a thing was possible for a monster of his size, shrugging of an attack that would have killed hundreds of shinobi in an instant. He saw Kisame emerge from the water swiftly with his sharks missing, and the look of alarm on the swordsman's face made the Mizukage even more tense. "It's as strong beneath the water as it is above. We couldn't even get close as it launched multiple whirlpools. It's too strong, Lord Fourth," yelled the swordsman swiftly. Naruto cursed and tried to think of his options. He barely had 2 minutes before the beast reached his fleet, and once it was inside his formation, it was all over. Even Kushina's barrier would not be able to stop him. The only thing he could find in his own arsenal of ninjutsu was the humanoid monster he had created during his last battle by joining the yin and yang chakra inside his body. But doing so even once had reduced his life by several years. Taking that risk again might just prove fatal. However, doing nothing would see his army annihilated even before it reached the enemy. He would go down in history as the most laughable Kage of all time. "How can I ask my men to die for me in my dream if I can't even do the same for them when needed most?" He chastised himself. In that moment he made his choice, but before he could call upon that divine power, he saw something with his red eyes that gave him another equally risky idea. He appeared beside Amiri with a quick Hiroshin, swiped his thumb with her twin holy swords, marking some of his chakra and blood upon the blades. "What?" asked the female swordsman in surprise. "Can you do your technique once more?" he asked her seriously. "Yes, but your blades can now trace my chakra, right?" asked the Kage quickly. "Yes." "Then launch your attack on my signal," he commanded without hesitation. "You'll die if you're in the radius, Naruto. You can't be faster than lightning even with your teleportation. You're not a god," she tried to warn him. Amiri was surprised to only receive a warm yet cocky smile in return before the fourth Mizukage charged towards the beast, an act of bravery, or sheer madness, the likes of which she had not seen in any man. "Naruto!" She yelled out for him, but he kept on charging forward. She cursed and quickly asked Kisame to get out of the water as she started gathering chakra for her devastating attack, hoping whatever gods that existed in the universe prevented her hands from becoming the ones that killed their insanely brave but dear leader. The warriors of Kirigakure stood on the edge of their ships and watched mesmerized as their Kage made a suicidal charge that not even the most bravest or craziest among them would have dared attempt it against a monster of that size. The heavens roared once again as Amiri brought forth the power of the thunder god back to life. Nor the sheer roar of the lightning gathering in the skies or the water missiles that emerged from the ocean rapidly broke the Mizukage's fearless charge as he kept on nearing towards the massive island. The beast must have sensed the approaching danger, which made it launch nearly 1,000 spikes from his back straight towards the charging Kage. In return, Naruto launched several dozen three-pronged kunai, and what followed next was something that his men would remember forever. Flash after flash happened without pause, with even the most acute sensor only able to see a black blurred dodge each and every spear sailing past him harmlessly. It was the giant turtle's turn next as the black flash suddenly appeared right above his barely exposed face. "Now!" Lightning roared upon the Mizukage's war cry as he threw one of his three-pronged kunai laced with his chakra straight towards the turtle's head, which was rapidly descending back into its hardened shell. The explosion that followed an instant later blinded each and every human while rocking the entire Kirigakure navy and the very ocean itself. Amiri and Kisame had gone extremely pale as they tried to search for their Kage amidst the humongous amount of vapor that was now shrouding the entire area since the lightning attack had struck beast and ocean without discrimination. The remnants of several dozen fishes floated lifelessly upon the ocean's surface, their charred corpses presenting a grotesque sight. Both swordsmen joined forces together to launch a respectable wind attack that slowly started to disperse the vapor spread across the entire area. As their vision started to clear, both of them advanced forward and were surprised as well as relieved at the same time to find their Kage floating over a now unconscious island turtle. Half of the beast's face was badly burned thanks to the monstrous lightning attack which had struck him without mercy before it could retreat back into its well-protected shell. Ash release. Particle annihilation. Dark ash-like chakra was launched from the Mizukage's body, which gathered around the exposed head and neck of the monstrous turtle before igniting in a thunderous explosion, By its end the beast was missing nearly half of its upper body, as the explosion had even penetrated deep into its hardened shell and obliterated everything in its path. Every human watched in awe and relief as the monstrous island started to sink into the ocean, but not before the fourth Mizukage procured their nation's flag from a scroll in his pouch and slammed it hard into the highest visible spike on the turtle's back. Absolute victory, the first of many in their grand conquest. Naruto, the 7 ninja swordsmen, and Mei turned back when a wave of cheerful roars emerged from their fleet, making them launch a quick return back to their men. Each of them clearly saw the respect and gratitude they had earned from their warriors and supporters when one by one the shinobi and feudal warriors gave them a respectful salute until the entire fleet joined the action. It was a sight that neither the 7 ninja swordsmen or Mei Terumi would forget for the rest of their lives, a feeling Naruto was now quite familiar with after having seen the same kind of unity and support from their people upon his coronation. The Black Flash, as he flew back towards his flagship with the 7 ninja swordsmen and Mei upon his heels, somebody from the fleet gave a ferocious roar of approval by calling him that name. The Black Flash, the Black Flash, the Black Flash. He stopped upon reaching his flagship as the entire fleet, and every warrior standing upon it thumped their chests repeatedly, and in unison as a sign of respect while giving him a name which he had once thought was only a product of Madara's fantasy. It made him climb upon the mast of the flagship so he could be visible to his entire fleet as he raised his sword high in the air. To our great conquest! He roared fearlessly. Kushina smiled upon seeing the fiery response the entire fleet gave upon their Kage's proclamation. It only strengthened her hope of avenging her lost comrades by destroying the nation that had killed them in the last war. Come, my warriors! Kumogakure and the shinobi world awaits us. History would remember the Battle of the Raging Seas as one of the most important events of the Second Great Ninja War. It was not only one of the rare instances where mankind had prevailed upon forces of nature across the ocean, but also marked the demise of the beast responsible for protecting Kumogakure's waters from its enemies. What followed afterwards was a tale of hardship, pain and change that shook humanity itself, with history immortalizing it in its pages forever as the Great March. Kumogakure, the third Raikage, had been gazing at his village when he heard one of his men immediately march inside the room. Judging from Dodai's worried expression, the news weren't good. Genba is gone, my lord. Usually he appreciated the man's habit of stating the point directly, but not today. Come again? He usually disappears from time to time, you know that, reprimanded the dark-skinned Kage. His name vanished from the contract scroll. We had kept him on patrol duty in the ocean to spot and intercept any invasion fleet that could launch from Kirigakure towards us or our allies. He had successfully foiled an earlier attempt few months ago by sinking the water daimyo's fleet headed towards Iwagakure to rescue their previous 7 ninja swordsmen commanded attack force, pointed Dodai worriedly. The third Raikage frowned, as the only reason the beast's name would disappear from the holy contract scroll would be if he no longer existed in this world. He marched down to his desk and took a seat, making Dodai follow after him. Then it's just as we feared. Kirigakure has launched a full-scale invasion upon us. The fact that they took out Genbu is proof they have strong warriors among their ranks, and this army is strong unlike the earlier one. What reports are our spies giving us? Asked the Raikage seriously. Only that soon reinforcements will be landing in Osaka to launch a deeper incursion into our lands. I have asked Lord A and the Kinkaku Black Ops alongside our frontier army to stop that from happening, explained Dodai honestly. That may not be the enemy's real strategy. Fortify the feudal capital and our village's defenses. I want our main army fully mobilized alongside our Jinchurikis. The enemy's main targets will be these 2 locations. If they take it, this nation falls. Demand 10,000 reinforcements from Iwagakure, commanded the Raikage. IWA would never agree to such a huge number, warned Dodai. Then tell that fucked up mummy Mu that if Kumogakure falls, then his flank is wide open. If he doesn't want Kiri's barbarians plundering his lands and lose his title of Tsuchikage, then he will do well to send us as many reinforcements as possible to stop the enemy, just like we have helped him in the past, snarled the Raikage furiously. And if he refuses, he won't. Dodai chose not to further question his Kage, considering he looked far from pleased and their situation was deteriorating rapidly. What about Konoha? Asked the muscular Kage. They haven't launched a counter-invasion when your son made a tactical retreat back into our lands to stop what's happening in Osaka. They seem content to sit in their borders, probably exhausted to launch a fresh offensive just yet, suggested Dodai. No, they won't waste such a chance. Ask Sungakure to be on guard. The Land of Fire may not have the resources to invade us fully after the losses they have taken so far, but the sand is an easy target. Considering how the Tsuchikage would be too reluctant to support them considering their past rivalry, it is imperative the Kazekage shores up his defenses. Warned the Raikage. I'll relay the message. Lord Raikage promised Dodai dutifully. I'll also march alongside our army. Dodai was quite shocked to hear that and was about to protest against such a risky decision, but his leader had already raised his hand to stop him from raising those very protests. We may have the higher numbers, knowledge of our homeland, possible allies and even our Jinchurikis, but morale is also an important part of every battle, as is leadership. Unlike our enemies or allies or even the previous Mizukages who always preferred to direct their forces from the safety of their villages or established command centers, the 4th Mizukage fights alongside his army, pointed the Raikage seriously. A stupid move. If he falls, then his army could very well crumble in the debacle, rebuked Dodai. True, but on the other hand he shares every hardship and pain that he asks his men to endure. He takes the same or even greater risks to protect their lives. You'd be surprised how far shinobi would go for such a man. First Osaka, then our previous daimyo, the civil war in his nation, and now maybe Genbu as well. He doesn't seem like his predecessors who were content to order their armies to attack other nations while they remained safe in their home village. A Kage who fights his own battles, a rare breed indeed, praised the Raikage truthfully. What are you saying, Lord Raikage? Questioned Dodai in disbelief. An army of lions led by a sheep is less dangerous than an army of sheep led by a lion, whispered the Raikage prophetically, as he glanced at the picture of the new Mizukage in a bingo book on his desk. You seem awfully sure that the Mizukage is leading the invasion. I dare say, you even admire him, replied Dodai hesitantly, earning a smile from the older dark-skinned man. I admire his bravery and leadership. As a fellow Kage, it is only right that I meet him in battle with my own army. More importantly, you have heard tales about his teleportation technique. In that case, I am the only one in this village who can actually have a chance of defeating him, answered the 3rd Raikage with determination. Dodai knew he could not convince his leader to change his mind when he was this determined, and knew only time would tell the fate that awaited them all, including those of the enemies marching towards them. Chapter 40. Surgical Strike. Kumogakure. For the first time during the entire Second Great Ninja War, the 3rd Raikage found himself hard-pressed on multiple fronts within his very homeland. A week ago, the invading army from Kirigakure had landed upon their shores with nearly 12,000 warriors led by the 4th Mizukage himself. Already he had lost more than 24 smaller villages and cities on their northern flank, the city garrison and small militias in the territory no match for what his advisors were now calling as the Blitz tactic, where the enemy, despite their size, had seized vast swathes of their territory with unmatchable speed combined with great striking power. If that wasn't enough, an entire legionary fleet called the 99th Legion, led by Kiri's Umbu commander and Jinpachi of the 7 ninja swordsmen, were launching multiple raids along his coasts and fleeing away before the reinforcements sent by the Raikage could confront them in battle. The damage was already too severe. Contrary to the past Mizukages who were known for their brutality, the 4th Mizukage was different. Not a single case of plundering, rape or murder of innocents took place in every city or village that fell upon the northern flank. All combatants that fought against Kiri were eliminated, but also given full military burials at the hands of their own countrymen under the watch of their conquerors. It only drove home the message that resistance was futile, but also that their invaders were not barbarians, contrary to what their rulers were telling them, the ones who abandoned them to the Mizukage's army in the first place. To reinforce this perception, the Mizukage spared any warrior willing to surrender and join his ranks, even going so far as recruiting any civilians strong enough to fight within his army. With winter approaching, he didn't ransack any villages or cities of their crucial food stores or essentials to feed his army, having brought enough logistics to last for a year. Instead, he helped the people he conquered by sharing part of food, clothes, other essentials, and even helped the countrymen solidify their homes for the oncoming harsh winter while solidifying the bases of his own army. Even the raids being launched on the coasts didn't involve butchering of innocents, but only combatants, with tales of the magnanimous treatment being offered to their brethren up north spreading across the coastal areas like wildfire. If not for the reinforcements he had sent to hold those very coastal places, the Raikage feared the people's heart would have started to change. He had begged the daimyo to spare troops he had confiscated for the feudal capital's defense, warning the new lord that their enemy was trying to win the loyalty of their subjects without attacking strongholds he simply didn't have the power to conquer just yet. What of our allies? Asked the Raikage out loud, making his advisors look at him. IWA has sent a 5,000-strong force led by Anoki as our reinforcements. They should be here in 3 weeks, reported his Umbu commander swiftly. A token! Mu insults us, decried one of the ninja clan heads. On the contrary, the Raikage knew the 2nd Mizukage was being extremely cautious, having sent an equal number of reinforcements under his own son to Suna's aid, while keeping his 20,000-strong main army for the defense of his own nation. This way he could say he didn't discriminate between both of his allies while also keeping enough reserves for himself to defend his own nation should they fall. The Leaf has launched a similar invasion into the Land of Wind. The Sand has already lost critical zones including a water dam. The same blitz strategy seems to be play on that front as well, pointed Dodai, bringing everyone's attention back to the invaders within their own lands. He attacks our weakest links while holding back on confronting the strongest. The North has always felt neglected since the founding of our nation. It does not hold gold or minerals unlike the South, but it is responsible for nearly 60% food produce of our nation. The daimyos always favored the southern regions for development, while only providing token growth to the north, further alienating the people. Nearly half of his feudal warriors are from that region since the impoverished populace simply does not have enough employment opportunities except agriculture. The Mizukage has not only won the hearts of a disgruntled populace, but also secured food and water sources for the rest of his campaign. The longer he holds those regions and treats the people well, the more loyalty the daimyo loses from his own men who hail from the northern lands, warned the Umbu commander. We must confront him in battle before it's too late, stated the Raikage seriously. The daimyo forbade us from confronting the enemy just yet, my lord. He wants us to keep Kumogakure and the feudal capital firmly in our control, warned a clan head. The third Raikage cursed the youngling who had ascended to the throne after the murder of his predecessor at the hands of the same man who was currently invading their lands. The boy was in his late teens and was more insecure than any feudal lord he had ever seen. He wanted to protect his seat and the source of his military power, even if it meant losing their most important breadbasket. Let the enemy come to us. Winter is already upon us. He'll take substantial losses in the grim weather our men are used to fighting in. As tactical opinions would bring discuss left and right, the Raikage knew doing nothing like the daimyo suggested would only draw further catastrophe upon them. So he made his choice. We will confront him. Call back the 5,000 reserves from the capital which the daimyo took from us. Our feudal lord has 10,000 of his own guard to protect his seat. He won't have to worry about being dethroned once we crush the enemy, he announced. But my lord, that's... The 8 Tails Jinchuriki will march alongside our 15,000 strong army in total. I shall lead them personally. Meanwhile, the 2 Tails Jinchuriki will remain with the village. Have my son redeploy the Kinkaku Black Ops for the protection of this village along with any men he can spare. His orders are to crush the force at Osaka and then come back to protect this village. Should our army be defeated, his orders are to form a fresh army from the remnants of the old one, the reinforcements from our allies and our last Jinchuriki, and crush the enemy once and for all. The 4th Mizukage might be a great general, but he won't survive our wrath. The Raikage's thunderous declaration bolstered the resolve of his own comrades as they offered him their salutes and promised to carry out his orders even if meant going against the daimyo. As his subordinates started hustling out of the headquarters in order to prepare their army and send out the summons to their reserve force in the capital, the Raikage looked at the map of his own nation. I'd rather fight and accept the consequences than let the enemy force us to fight on his terms. A part of his heart was thrilled for the upcoming battle, for his opponent was the Namikaze. He had always believed his ancestors had wiped off their rival clan before the great nations were fully established. If reports were true, the 4th Mizukage was the last known survivor of his clan with no children of his own yet, and a widower. As the leader of the Kaizen clan, who were the only ones able to match the speed of the Namikaze clansmen, it was his duty to finish off his enemies once and for all. I shall soon meet you in battle, Naruto Namikaze. Then we shall see whether my armor and speed can defeat your teleportation technique. 2 days later, Kasaga City, northern borders of the Land of Lightning. Winters were as beautiful as they were deadly. The 4th Mizukage couldn't help but have that thought when he watched a group of children from the city happily playing with snow gathering in the streets, while a group of his own men shivered a bit while guarding the garrison headquarters he was currently occupying, unused to such cold climate despite their training and resilience. It was also another stark reminder of why he couldn't simply steamroll through this nation's territory. Only a fool would try, in best nature. It has always been strong enough to tame the arrogance of men. As he watched his commanders arrive inside the room, he knew the time to take action had arrived once again. Report, he ordered, as he marched towards the war table holding a well-described map of the nation they were invading. The enemy is moving towards us. A 15,000-strong army led by the 3rd Raikage himself, reported Kisame, who was acting as second in command of the 501st Special Forces, with Naruto himself tied up consolidating the territory they had gained alongside directing the attacks as well as movements of their entire army. It fell upon the older swordsmen to lead their most important unit in the war. While the 501st had not yet been actively deployed in battle, they had played a crucial role in gathering important intel about the enemy defenses, strength, locations, and supply routes. recon and disruption of supply lines. He had given Kisame these tasks, and the man had made his troops deliver by conducting reconnaissance from the skies without the enemy ever noticing their presence, and destroying their supply routes and bases before reinforcements could prevent such a disaster. The 99th Legion, led by the Umbu commander, and Jinpachi, harassed the enemy's coastal shores, thereby dividing their forces. The 212th and the 47th Legion, led by Mangetsu, with Haku as second in command, and Zabuza, with Amuri as second in command, were the ones mainly responsible for capturing enemy territories once the other two legions had disarrayed and destroyed the enemy's strength. The Mizukage's personal guard and the logistics unit combined with the medical teams remained in the rear and fortified every town and village their armies captured, with the 4th Mizukage himself addressing his new subjects personally to oversee their smooth integration, while also driving recruiting efforts that had provided them nearly 4,000 fresh recruits. While not on par with standard shinobi or feudal forces, these new recruits were quickly being trained to fight to a respectable level and could be used as shock troops against fortified positions or dangerous advanced maneuvers. But this entire war effort would suffer a terrible blow if he lost the 501st, which were his eyes and ears. It was why they would not be used in battle until absolutely necessary or victory appeared more greater with their contribution. Then we honor the Raikage's wish, but on a battlefield of our choosing. Besides, I anticipate our men are itching for a real fight, declared Naruto with a smile, earning a boisterous set of laughs from his commanders as they each knew of the numerous complaints they had heard from their men about wanting to fight against real warriors instead of simple farmers or militia forces. Granted, a part of that yearning came from that very first battle against the deceased Turtle Genbu, and their magnificent victory against the beast. There will be plenty of glory for everyone, but for that we need to win the war, reminded Haku gently. A smart woman you are, Haku. It's why I placed you near our impulsive Mangetsu. Stop him from doing something reckless, teased Naruto, earning a happy nod from the girl and an embarrassed look from the Hozuki heir. I'm not that bad, Lord Fourth, complained Mangetsu. You asked for action more than the other commanders in this room, pointed Naruto, making the Hozuki swordsman sigh in defeat. I guess my wish is granted now, answered Mangetsu. He, alongside the rest of the commanders, watched their Kage nod before completely focusing his attention upon the map in front of him. Mangetsu couldn't help but imagine as to what went inside that brain of his leader, that he hadn't lost them any battle yet. Perhaps his father had seen such talent before anyone in their nation ever had, something for which Mangetsu was thankful. The Raikage's aim is to crush us even if it costs his army dearly. He won't shy away from a brutal battle, while hoping his remaining forces led by his son alongside their allies would be enough to crush Konoha once our faction is crushed. It is exactly why we need to avoid a full-scale battle at first, advised Naruto. But Lord Fourth, you just said, pointed Amuri, already earning a nod of understanding from their Kage. We destroy his logistics first, his army supplies to be specific. Force him to engage us in battle at a severe disadvantage in morale, resources, and attrition to his forces. The point behind following this approach is simple: we can't afford to sustain high casualties so soon. We are here to win a world war, not a single battle. Kushina had been sitting on the sidelines and silently watched as the Mizukage explained his strategy in depth to all of his commanders while answering each and every question raised by them and also appreciating any valuable opinion whenever it was presented. It made her understand exactly what Nagato Uzumaki must have seen in him nearly a decade ago. Enough for the boy to sacrifice his own life. If only Yuza had realized what you had, Nagato. Maybe it would have been our nation establishing a new world and not Kyrgyzstan. Despite what was done to both of them, she still couldn't bring herself to hate her nation. She wanted the Mizukage and the Ninja Council to answer for what they did to the Spartans, to correct the wrongs of the past. But for that, their nation didn't need to be destroyed. Family was extremely important for the Uzumaki clan, but only few ever understood it. She could understand the Mizukage desire to cling to power and do what he had done. There simply weren't many strong warriors among their clan left to succeed him after the first great ninja war. Majority of the best had been the Spartans, and they perished to get that victory. Perhaps in time Nagato would have become one, but he died too young. Yet the Mizukage never chose the successor that was always in front of him. As she watched her best friend interact with his commanders, she realized the reason. He was not an Uzumaki, neither by blood or ideology. Granted, he was loyal to their nation, but he was just never truly one of them, at least to people like the Mizukage, who alongside the Ninja Council had built their village to primarily protect the Uzumaki clan. How could the Uzumaki clan and Yuzushiogakure as a nation allow a Namikaze to lead them of all people? It made her once again curse the old farts so stuck in their rigid thinking that affected the future of their nation. They would have even been comfortable to let Nagato succeed had he grown up to be a worthy successor, because he was at least half Uzumaki through his father Yahiko Uzumaki, something which his older half-brother didn't have. Genjutsu Hozuki, you may not have won great battles and your reign ended in disgrace. Yet even in death, you secured the future of your nation. You rose above politics, clan rivalry, self-interests, and even your own son and family. From your ashes, you gave birth to a worthy successor that will herald your nation towards a better future and change the course of this world. You were a more worthy Kage than mine ever was. Lord Fourth, I volunteer for the first phase of our operation, offered Mangetsu resolutely, which only made Kushina see the legacy of the Second Mizukage even more clearly. As few more commanders started voicing their own desire to lead the most dangerous part of the mission, their Mizukage raised his hand, making them fall silent once again and look at him. The bait has to be tempting enough for the Raikage to make a decision that would prove too costly for him eventually. Forgive my directness, but the only thing that can gain the reaction we desire is my own presence, answered Naruto. Kushina watched him quell multiple protests from his commanders with more patience and compassion than she thought he was capable of. I am the only one who can get away from there in time with my teleportation. I need every fighter and commander from this army for a very long and brutal war. I won't throw your lives away even if it means risking my own. I'll go with him, she volunteered, much to everyone's surprise and her friend's displeasure. Kaori, he began, I'm a mercenary. I understand you don't want to lose your men and commanders, but I can't afford you getting hurt or killed. My paycheck depends on it, she retorted fiercely, unwilling to let her dear friend and her clan's future fade into oblivion alone. Naruto looked around and saw his commanders were not opposed to her presence if their Kage was not allowing them to get involved in the first place. Very well, he agreed. He finished up the meeting by debriefing the key aspects of their strategy before asking his childhood friend to stay back, an order she accepted with great reluctance. What was that? He asked sharply, as soon as the others were gone from the room. To her credit, Kushina looked at him unflinchingly. I left you once. I won't do it again. Even if you ask me to, she promised him fearlessly. But, it's done, Lord Fourth. He was quite surprised with her defiance, and before he could protest further, she simply marched out of the room, leaving him speechless. He understood where she was coming from, and what made her make such a reckless choice. For he would have made the same if their roles had been reversed. Maybe it was their destiny as the last remaining Spartans to avenge the deaths of their comrades together by destroying the nation that sent them to the afterlife well before their time. 1 week later, Lord Raikage. We have located the enemy. The dark-skinned was up on his feet instantly alongside his advisors as the scout crashed to his knees in the war tent due to sheer exhaustion and respect at the same time. Clarify, he ordered swiftly. We found the enemy's main base camp. They quickly detected our presence. My team sacrificed themselves so I could get this message to you. The fourth Mizukage is there, reported the scout seriously, some sadness present in his voice for the comrades he had lost in getting this critical information. He dismissed a man after taking the location of the enemy from the man while allowing his supporters to take care of the shinobi. What do you think? He asked Dodai, his most trusted advisor. Forgive my disbelief, but I think this is a trap. The fourth Mizukage is known for his teleportation. He wouldn't allow any of our scouts to escape should they discover his army's main base, warned Dodai. Are you doubting our men now, Dodai? Asked the Umbu commander with a disappointed glare. No, they are good warriors. But we need to be cautious, argued Dodai fiercely. We have marched all this way, disobeyed the daimyo, placed our village in a vulnerable fashion, all in order to crush him once and for all. If he wants a fight, then we shall make sure it is his last, declared the Raikage. My lord. Dodai was silenced with a heavy glare from the dark-skinned man who had apparently decided that he would be fighting this battle. Let's see what the fourth Mizukage is made of. Kirigakure camp. Naruto watched Kushina get up from her kneeling position and give him a firm nod, making him glance at the thousands of warriors waiting by their side. In truth, most of them were all mere shadow clones supplied by his entire army, with only a small elite guard of real Umbu Black Ops mixed in, something which Mangetsu had insisted he take with him if he was to do this. Their base camp was situated on a huge hilltop with only one route that could lead to its entrance, which was heavily fortified and full of booby traps. At the same time, the same route led deeper south towards the feudal capital, something he knew the Raikage would want to prevent at all costs if he wanted to keep his title. They are coming, his friend told him, as she joined by his side. Enough for a good fight? He asked with a smirk, making Kushina sigh. More than enough. Naruto nodded confidently at that answer as he unleashed Muramasa from his back as his friend. Their Umbu and the Shadow Clone Army prepared their own weapons. I've waited a decade for this moment. It's not just about you that made me come here, whispered Kushina earnestly, earning a subtle and understanding nod from her old friend. For Hate and Kasumi proposed Naruto respectfully, as he remembered two of his dear comrades who had fallen in these very lands. The enemy came into sight, hundreds upon hundreds of bloodthirsty hidden cloud ninjas charging towards them with fearsome war cries and monstrous killing intent. For Nagato and all our Spartans, she whispered with determination, before raising her sword high in the air. Today, Kumogakure pays their tribute in blood, roared Kushina murderously. His blood boiled with a thirst for vengeance that had burned within him ever since the fall of his comrades. It was to avenge them. No prisoners! He yelled thunderously, as he finished his set of hand seals. Earth-style, Great Mud River. A cold smirk arrived upon his lips when a dozen Kumo shinobi were swept off their feet, when the ground beneath their feet turned into a slippery river of mud that mercilessly sent them crashing down from the mountain to a gruesome death. He created dozens of boulders next which Kushina wrapped with the help of her chakra chains before unleashing them with devastating speed upon the disarrayed enemy forces. The veterans among the warriors reacted better this time and unleashed combination lightning strikes that obliterated most of the approaching boulders swiftly. What they didn't know, however, was that each of those boulders were strapped with an explosive tag which Kushina unleashed one after another, and instead of fiery explosion, the weapons rained down a flood of shrapnel that tore through eyes, necks, armor, limbs, and heads. The sheer brutality of the attack decimated the entire front line of the enemy, the ground littered with the bodies of their dead or critically wounded comrades. It made the second wave pause for several long seconds before they were galvanized when Panther Masked Umbu took charge, earning a roar of approvals from the previously demoralized enemy forces. That's the Umbu commander of Kumogakure. I saw him a few times when he visited the previous daimyo with the Raikage, pointed Kushina. Finally a real challenge, replied Naruto with a smirk. We are here to act as a diversion. Let's stick to that until necessary, she warned him, making him sigh but give a nod regardless. Few miles south. Pick up the pace. Kisame's fierce command made the 501st Commandos flying alongside him channel more chakra into their wing devices on their back, thereby increasing their speed. From the corner of his eyes, he saw great explosions happening across the far-off hills where their Mizukage himself was acting as a diversion for them to complete their mission. It was beyond insane and reckless, but he could not deny the enemy had fallen for the trickery. In their haste to eliminate the man leading an invasion into their lands alongside the majority of his army, they had marched most of their forces, including their best fighters, to eliminate the Kiri army alongside its leader. In doing so, they had left their base camp undermanned and vulnerable to an extent. A location which held most of their supplies, be it food, water, clothing, armor, weapon cache, relief materials for the territory they wanted to liberate from the invaders, and even money. All of it now ripe for destruction or looting by the very same enemy. He laughed upon seeing the alarm bells ringing across the enemy base camp when their defenders caught sight of hundreds upon hundreds of Kirigakure commandos flying towards them, led by one of the most feared 7 ninja swordsmen. Capture or destroy? Asked one of the squad leaders, pointing towards the supply caches that the enemy was now desperately trying to evacuate, but it was already too late. While I would love to take their resources and use it against them, Naruto warned us to bug out quickly. The moment the Raikage learns about this attack, he'll come here personally. You don't want to be around to face him, explained Kisame seriously. We can take him, Captain promised the squad leader boisterously, earning a frown from the older swordsman. He may not be a great tactician like our Kage, but the Raikage is a beast in battle. If he gets here in time, most if not all of us will die painfully. Your orders are to destroy this base and its supplies before bugging out. No ground-based combat, is that clear? Asked Kisame sternly, looking at the other squad leaders around him with a challenging stare, and was satisfied when they all backed off after watching his murderous gaze. Kisame gave the signal which made his entire force split into smaller groups among multiple waves instead of one large formation. The first wave flew over the enemy camp and dropped a barrage of smoke bombs that shrouded the entire camp, swiftly making visibility extremely low. The arrows sent by the civilian defenders along with few lightning strikes by the enemy shinobi managing to hit 2 of the Kiri commandos, who were swiftly grabbed by the rest of their squadron and pulled away to safety. The second wave had been right behind the lead of the first and unleashed sealing scrolls full of shrapnel projectiles that exploded across the entire camp as soon as they hit the ground. Dozens upon dozens of painful screams echoed among the Kumo defenders as many died instantly while others were severely wounded. What little cohesion they had been able to mount in their defense broke down due to the smoke across the entire camp and their increasing casualties. Kisame himself moved in with the third wave, and together they bombarded the entire camp with hundreds upon hundreds of explosive tags that obliterated the supply tents first, followed by the medical station. Then came their headquarters before the destruction befell upon the makeshift barracks/tents for the army. He could not help but smile on watching the destruction and death he and his men were wreaking upon the broken enemy. It was not something he was not used to already, having killed hundreds of men in battle during his entire life. But the carnage he was inflicting today was surgical and deadly. It was war, and he loved it. The third Raikage had sent 5,000 of his men, the best shock troops of his army, to weaken the enemy considerably before he descended upon them with the rest of his 9,000-strong force. He had left the last 1,000 of his men, mostly young ninjas and medical staff, under the command of few Umbu Black Ops squads to defend their base camp that was a few miles down south from their current position. He had ordered those reserves to fortify their base and set up traps, while having a communication team on continuous duty to inform him should the base come under attack. He highly doubted the enemy had the strength to do just that, considering the majority of their army was present here. Even if they managed to send a ground force of few hundred ninjas, his men would be able to hold off long enough for him to arrive with reinforcements. "They are fighting admirably," he commented begrudgingly. "Unfortunately, yes, my lord," agreed Dodai reluctantly, as he caught sight of a redhead kunoichi leading a brutal melee fight with dozens of Kumogaku shinobi. Her chakra chains were a power to be feared, as another 24 men lay dead around her, with few more unlucky ones already smacked down from the mountains into the steep valley by those very chains. "I have seen her somewhere, my lord," he whispered hesitantly. "Where?" asked the Raikage curiously. "Rezang-la." The dark-skinned Kage's eyes widened in shock as he was reminded of a battle his village had tried their best to conceal for so many years. "You're not joking, are you?" asked the Kage seriously. "I wish I was. But I cannot forget those chakra chains. They butchered many of my men from Raijin Battalion that day," confessed Dodai. The Raikage was alarmed. Dodai had been the commander of Raijin Battalion, an elite unit of their village in the First Great Ninja War. Along with the Kinkaku Black Ops, he had been tasked to prevent the Spartans of Yuzushiogakyo from rescuing the captured Hashirama back to his homeland. He had even been reinforced by the two-tailed beast to succeed in that task, only for that very Biju to be brutally murdered, the entirety of Raijin Battalion perishing except for their commander, who only survived because the Kinkaku reached the battlefield and wiped out the Spartans to the last commando, but still failed in preventing them from rescuing Hashirama Senju. That defeat costed them the war, as the first Hokage gathered his forces upon his return to Konoha and smashed his enemies to force a truce. For that victory, the Spartans had sacrificed themselves. If Dodai was unnerved by watching that female kunoichi who could possibly be a rare Spartan survivor, he literally blanched in terror and took several steps back when a blonde warrior teleported beside the redhead. "The Mizukage," growled the Raikage furiously, as he felt his own bloodlust come alive. "That teleportation, that dark chakra. It can't be," whispered Dodai in a trembling voice, completely in contrast with his usual composed self. The Raikage had never seen his trusted advisor be so alarmed. It was as if he had seen a terrifying ghost as he saw the fourth Mizukage unleash dark ash-like chakra from his body to set many of their men on fire, including the Kumogaku Umbu commander himself. "The Black Flash. It's him," said Dodai nervously, memories of the Biju's murder from that day coming back to haunt him. "Don't be foolish, Dodai." Yuzu itself confirmed that the Spartan died of his wounds from the Battle of Rezang-la. "You're being delusional," reprimanded the Raikage disappointedly. "I was there, my lord. You have to believe me." Dodai's frantic pleas were cut short when the Raikage watched a disheveled Mabui from the communication team of their base camp appear beside him in a quick shunshin. "Lord Raikage, the base camp is under attack. Heavy casualties," she reported quickly, even as blood continued falling from the deep wound across her back in which the Raikage saw several shrapnel pieces were still buried. "How bad?" he asked with as much composure as he could, unwilling to let his men see any panic in their leader when their situation was deteriorating. "The enemy attacked from the air. They carried themselves upon winged devices and bombed us brutally. Most of the camp is destroyed. Without reinforcements, the rest will be gone too. I barely managed to get away," she whispered in a trembling voice. "Winged devices?" asked the Raikage hesitantly, as an old battle report he had read long ago came back to haunt him. "My lord, only one foe in our village's history attacked us with such weapons. I am begging you, this is not a coincidence," pleaded Dodai desperately. Before the Raikage could reply, few of his men swarmed around him and protect him from a rain of severed heads that came crashing down upon them. Their Umbu commander also among them, his panther Umbu mask now carrying only one world covered in blood s. He turned back towards the mountain and saw the Mizukage alongside the redhead kunoichi and few other warriors had joined together in a tight circle by holding each other's hands, while the rest of their army held back Kumos and enraged warriors that were trying hard to avenge the murder of their Umbu commander. For a moment, his gaze landed upon the fourth Mizukage and there was a cold and merciless smile upon his lips. He disappeared alongside his group in a dark flash, and the next moment the entire hill exploded in a catastrophic detonation which drowned out the screams of thousands of Kirigakure and Kumogakure shinobi that were reduced to ashes in less than a few seconds as the rest of his army scrambled to save themselves from the crumbling hill. Only later the Raikage would learn the enemy had barely lost any real shinobi in that battle, and by the time he returned back with reinforcements, his base camp, logistics, and medical teams, and most if not all of his supplies were a smoldering pile of dust and ash. This was not an act of a young Kage eager for glory, but of a shinobi who had been trained for war. To hit the enemy where it hurt most with minimum cost, just the training a good Black Ops commander would receive. It made him realize an important aspect of the enemy he was facing, albeit at the cost of 6,000 lives lost and his war supplies destroyed. It was a dark day for Kumogakure, where the consequences of the past had came back to haunt them.